I was involved in an incident where a possessed woman came after me, and it was it started with a phone call, and when I picked up the phone, the demon's voice came across the phone. It had meter, it had diction, but I couldn't understand the language. And I said, and when it did, it so got me. I mean, my hands started shaking.
Yeah.
Okay. It just struck a kind of fear, and I didn't see it coming, didn't know it was coming. And I stopped and I said, in the name of Christ, you speak to me in English. Who are you and what do you want? And it said, I am Satan and I'm coming to kill you. And she did show up at my house later on that night. And all of a sudden her voice went, I, and right down it went. I can't
Holy
even
cow.
do it. I knew that there was a demonic problem. And then I got a call from her husband. Her husband said she's on her way over to where you are. And by that time, it's dark. So this was about midnight that she ends up coming over to the house. And we have a little garage, and she tried to take her car and ram it, but as she did, something stopped the car. The rear end of the car came up and sat back down really hard. I believe that was angels that stopped her car. She tried to bite me, spit on me, scratch me, and all of a sudden her voice just dropped, and the same thing, whatever was said to me on the phone, the same thing came out of her mouth right then and there.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of I Came With Fire podcast. If you're new here, welcome in. We appreciate you checking us out. If you're not new here, hello again. It's nice to see you. I Came With Fire podcast, we are meant to be a bridge in the divide, a place for objective truth and educated opinion, I like to say, because we will give our opinion. Doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. We make a lot of predictions, but we do our best to stay left of center, right of center, and give you guys everything in between. And so thanks for joining us for the show. Yeah. You know, we're getting there. And we're joined tonight by actually a very special person, Pastor Eric Hambrock, who just so happens to be the father of our lovely permanent guest, Chris, over here. Thank you for joining us tonight, Pastor. I appreciate your time.
It's great to be here.
And before you can say anything, Dad, I legally have to go. Any and all opinions that you hear on this podcast are completely and totally those of the hosts and the guests. They do not represent the Department of Defense, the United States Army, or any other entity within the United States government.
Man, that sounded memorized.
Disclaimed.
He has said it so many times. Yeah, it is.
Gotcha.
It is. It's memorized. Absolutely. Speaking of entities, tonight we actually brought you on to have a conversation in the realm of demonology. And tonight is supposed to be a conversation that's meant to educate. It's also meant to be a conversation where we can ask questions and learn and educate the audience. And then I know that you have some stories as well. You spent some time, correct me if I'm wrong, you have actually participated in or conducted exorcisms in the past, correct?
I have participated in an exorcism. Yes, I have. Yeah.
Right.
A couple. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so something else too, right? Like I feel like it's a very Hollywoodized thing, exorcisms. This has become a part of the horror pop culture. It's probably one of the most overdone tropes in horror movies, exorcism, demon possession, all of these things. Mm-hmm. And I know that some of these movies aim to get it right. I know that like the Conjuring series actually hired people who've participated, like priests and things like that, and other I guess you could say like religious scholars, to advise on set, but they never get it completely right because they're trying to be hyperbolic on purpose for shock value and effect. So we could talk about those things, and we can talk about the things that you've seen and sort of make it more real on a actual personal level for people who are listening. And but I think one of the areas that I really want to begin in here is the history of this, where the idea of a demon came from, because there's a lot of information out there that people, I guess, think is true, or have misconceptions about, because there are so many people online now who say that they know, they read a book, they read this, they listen to somebody else, they pontificate online and say, this is the truth of the fall, this is what a demon is, or all ghosts are demons, or whatever. There's all these opinions online, and I'd like to hear from you, somebody who has that expertise, and I know other people will appreciate that. But the idea, and from what I know, I'll just be very upfront, like I don't have the knowledge that you guys have, but a demon is an angel who followed Satan out of heaven when he was thrown out, cast out of heaven, and that's kind of the extent of my knowledge where that came from, and where you might be. It might be a good place for you to start filling in, I guess, the gaps. Is that accurate? Where demons, like the nature and the history of demons began?
Yes, you basically nailed it. There's no reason to overcomplicate the situation. We have a couple of places in the Bible, and that's going to be our reference. That's going to be my references, biblical references, in order for us to be able to get the story. So we're told in Genesis, in the very beginning, that God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was without form and void. Then we fast forward all the way to the Gospel of John, and so from the time when the earth was created, or before the earth was created, Jesus saw heaven kicked out, saw Satan kicked out of heaven, and it looked like lightning, which, by the way, should really create some really funny images. You could get a little laughter, God, finger, thumb, and
there you go.
Lightning, and
Dad,
he lands.
Excuse me. I preemptively grabbed these because I knew what you were getting ready to reference. It's Luke 10:18.
Oh, Luke 10:18. Okay,
yeah.
Great.
So.
I don't know why I had it in my. I thought for sure that's the Gospel of John.
I got it pulled up right here, and I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven.
There you go. Okay, you got me. Anyway, and so he is put into that space where God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, so Jesus saw it, God was creating it, it was in that space, God created the earth, and that's the reason why when Adam and Eve came around, Satan was there, and he had already fallen. And the Bible tells us that we gather over in the book of Revelations, I believe it's Revelations, that when it happened, 1/3 of the angels
I got that
went
pulled
with
up
him.
for you here if you want me to read
Where
it.
is it?
Revelations chapter 12, verses 7 through 12.
I got one right.
I have the message, but you get it. You get them all right. The problem is you've forgotten more about the Bible than most people know. So I'll give you one.
Wow.
I'll give you one.
I'll
give you one Luke versus John reference because all the synoptics are so close to each other. But
John's
it says,
not a synoptic. Remember that.
Yes. See, now you got me. That's right. Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Anyway, it says, and war broke. This is from the Message version. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but were no match for Michael. They were cleared out of heaven, not a sign of them left. The great dragon, ancient serpent, the one called devil, and Satan, the one who led the whole earth astray, thrown out, and all his angels thrown out with him, thrown down to earth. Then I heard a strong voice out of heaven saying, salvation and power are established. Kingdom of our God, authority of his Messiah, the accuser of our brothers and sisters thrown out, who accused them day and night before God. They defeated him through the blood of the Lamb and the bold word of their witness. They weren't in love with themselves. They were willing to die for Christ. So rejoice, O heavens, and all who live there, but doomed to earth and sea. For the devil's come down on you with both feet. He's had a great fall. He's wild and raging with anger. He hasn't much time, and he knows it.
Let me ask you a question right there. I have one right off the bat.
Go ahead.
When it said that there was a war in heaven, what is that referring to?
It's referring to a time where there was a clash. And so that's a particular war. And so the word that would be translated into war. I'm not really sure. I'd have to go back and do a study on it. But what Chris is using for a reference is not a translation. It is a paraphrase.
Okay.
So I'm not sure of the word that is there, although it's a very educated paraphrase. I am familiar with Eugene Peterson's The Message. So it's good.
Just to be,
it makes good for an easy read. Go ahead.
Yeah, all things being equal, I pulled up. I'm on YouVersion, and so I've got basically all the versions pulled up. It's just the message was on top, and I decided to read it because Eugene Peterson has a way with words, and it explains the Bible more like a story and kind of narrative. It's easier to read.
Yeah,
but as I go down through,
for an easy read.
As I go down through KJV, and there was War in Heaven, NASB, and there was War in Heaven, NCV, and there was War in Heaven, scrolling all the way down to my absolute favorite, the ESV. Now War arose in heaven. So it is the same word that they're all opting for.
Referencing. And as I recall in my studies of this particular one, it's the idea that there's a clash, one side versus the other. So you have a clash that happens. We get a bit of a misunderstanding with the word of war. One of the misteachings that ends up happening that just absolutely drives me nuts is when people say, "Oh, the war between good and evil," or basically what they're referring to is that a war between God and Satan. And the reason why that is absolutely nuts is because God is creator, even Satan is created. And there is never such a thing as a war from creator to created. I bring that up because that also goes into what some people believe about AI. And, oh, man, we got to be careful of AI. Someday it's going to raise up. It'll take over any humans, blah, blah, blah. No, I got news for you. You can never overcome the principle that creator will always be greater than created. It can never supersede creator. Created cannot. It just can't.
I'm intrigued, but I don't want to run down that rabbit hole with you right now.
What's that?
Because we have a topic we need to stick on.
Yeah. But that works for us right now because that's one of the principles that we need to remember when we talk about God and Satan. You have God, creator. You have Satan, created. He is that being, and it can never rise up over creator. That just can't happen. It can never happen. Sure. But it is a doctrine of demons. Chris, if you would look up for me 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 1. And NLT, please, if you'll do that version. Because I'm more familiar with what it's going to say. And that's one of the things that is out there. We have people that are really into this demonic thing and the power that it has. The main thing is not necessarily to become so grotesquely over evil in order to scare people, which there certainly is a side that does that. But really, the greatest evil that Satan does is actually to mislead you. Because by the deception that he has, he propagates destruction. And he doesn't care how he destroys you. He doesn't care if he does it. He doesn't care if you destroy yourself, suicide, overeating, drugs. Sure. It doesn't matter. The idea is he hates God, the creator. He's the one who kicked him out of heaven. God loves man. The best way to get at somebody is to destroy what they love.
Right.
You said 1 Thessalonians 4?
Yeah, chapter 4, verse 1.
Okay.
And can you read that for me?
It says, as for other matters, brothers and sisters, we instructed you how to live in order to please God, as in fact you are living. Now we ask you and urge you in the Lord Jesus to do this more and more.
That's not the one that I wanted.
Okay.
That's 1 Thessalonians. Maybe it was 2 Thessalonians 4.
We'll move on to 2 Thessalonians.
Yeah.
Well, while Chris is looking that up, what was the disagreement that caused the clash?
Book of Isaiah. I will ascend unto the holy hill, and I will take over the throne of God. Basically, Satan, the created, wanted to take over the position of the creator. What I'm looking for is it talks about the doctrine of demons. In the latter days, people will be deceived.
Okay,
Do you have it?
I know what verse you're looking for now. I'll find it. But
Yeah,
anyway, go ahead, guys.
Timothy. It's not Thessalonians.
Okay.
Timothy 4. There it is. Boom. It hit.
It's all good. It's all good. You need to have
okay.
another cup of holy coffee.
Okay. Have you got it?
So
Go ahead.
It says, now the Holy Spirit tells us clearly that in the last time some will turn away from the true faith. They will follow deceptive spirits and teachings that come from demons. These people are hypocrites and liars, and their consciences are dead.
Mm-hmm.
I went ahead and threw verse 2 on the end for you.
Yeah, you can do that. And so that is the overall of and if you think about it, it's evil. So if the whole point of God is to bring us home, and that's it. He loves us. The idea is that there's a thing that separates us from God. This thing is called sin, but he's going to wipe it out. He did that with the death. We just come through Easter. That is what the death of Jesus Christ is all about. If you participate in that sacrifice, you can make heaven your home. And so God is up here in heaven, and Satan down here. This is where we are, and God's trying to get us up to here to where he wants us to be. Okay. And in between that, the greatest thing is that the enemy of our soul wants to destroy us and literally take that destruction, that's something that God laid down his life for, and shove it into God's face and said, these people, you love them, they don't love you. And how he does that is by pure deception. Okay? And that's the greatest thing. Now, out there are people that will end up worshiping Satan. Well, if you think about it, I laid down my life for you and you would rather choose the evil. I mean, think about that. If we put that in terms of United States versus the worst communistic country out there, and here you have people who have laid down their life so that you can have freedom. I'm talking to two guys who have entered into service in order to protect people so that we could have freedom. And you and I don't know, take Columbia University today, right? Sure. People storming into the library and literally spitting on the flag and doing all supporting that kind of Hamas stuff and choosing evil. And and I can only imagine how that can make you feel, that you were willing to put yourself into service and lay down your life, and people willingly choose evil and something that would literally wrap them up into confinement, because that's what communism will do. You're so bound into it, you're not free. And people would rather choose that, and yet you guys were willing to lay your life down so that they could be free. Just tell me, right out of your heart, how does that make you feel?
I mean, to me, it's disappointing to see people that are that ideologically captured that they can't even recognize that there's a country, that the country that they live in, there's all these people, not just, people like Chris and I who served in the military, but that have lost their lives over generations.
They've literally died.
Sacrifice, right. Mm-hmm. Lost their lives over generations to sacrifice, and then all the families as well that have had to endure the sacrifices that their loved ones have made for them, and they do it not just for their loved ones, but for everybody in this country. It is, to me, the biggest feeling I get from it is very disheartened and disappointment in seeing people who can't appreciate others and the sacrifices they make for them. That's how I feel personally.
Okay. I'll tell you the one that literally nailed me. Got to take a bunch of high schoolers to Washington, D.C., and one night me and my other son slipped onto the subway, went over to the Pentagon. I wanted to see the wall. I wanted to see how a plane could literally come down the Potomac, and geography is everything. You know it. And so we went there, and I can look straight down the Potomac. And then the day after that, we went over to the Jefferson Memorial, and you can see up Capitol Hill. And as you're looking there, you've got guys that are arguing, but there is a field in Pennsylvania where 26 guys on a plane literally gave up their lives so guys could argue on Capitol Hill over garbage.
I still can't listen to those phone calls, man.
Yeah.
The one that did the Lord's Prayer with the guy, and he goes, "Are you ready? Yeah, let's go." And boom, it happened. Yeah, I look at that and I cannot believe that those, can we call them men, literally can stand up there, especially some of the lies and so forth that we hear today that's nowhere close to the truth, and all people have to do is look and see, and yet they can still do that. And in a field in Pennsylvania, 26 guys died so that those guys on Capitol Hill could still argue like they do.
Yeah, I think one of the most
that is grotesque to me, and to the point I could almost break out and cry about it to this very day. Okay, what I'm getting at is that captures my heart in such a way. Think then about God. We're created in His image, so when it comes to emotions, you can identify with God's heart and what He is going through, and that there are people who will literally worship the person who hates them, and the person who loves them and gave up his life for them is going, "But come to me." But they won't.
Well, you know, it's interesting you bring that up, because there's a few people that I've served with over the last 15 years who have become Satanists, and there's one that comes to my mind right now. And to see her, I read some of the posts she made when she converted before I walked away and unfollowed her on social media and all this. And the explanation about it is this very self-aggrandizing, me first, right? It's all about self-fulfillment. It's this very self-centered ideology, religion, if you want to call it that. There's nothing about other people. It's just putting you and your needs first, and that to me is entirely antithetical to God in general. How you can't even, it's so obvious, I guess, when I look at it, that it's the opposite of Christ, that it's just like this is it, to get you to think that you are the most important when you're not. That's the lie, right? That's the big lie that you're talking about. That's how I view it.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I went ahead and pulled up your Isaiah passage to round out the pieces of scripture that tell us who Satan was. And so beginning of verse 12, Isaiah chapter 14, it says, "How you are fallen from heaven, O shining star, son of the morning. You have been thrown down to the earth, you who destroyed the nations of the world. For you said to yourself, I will ascend to heaven and set my throne above God's stars. I will preside on the mountain of the gods far away in the north. I will climb to the highest heavens and be like the Most High. Instead, you will be brought down to the place of the dead, down to its lowest depths."
And that for a word is to the realm of the dead in Jewish custom is called Gehenna, a Gehenna, and it is the realm of the dead. Where we get the word hell is from the Greek word Hades, and so they're literally two different places. Gehenna. In Hebrew custom, Jesus actually gives the description of that. It's found in the story of rich man and Lazarus, and the realm of that realm of the dead, Gehenna, is actually paradise is on one side. There's a great big rift, and it separates the two, and hell, Hades, Gehenna is on the other side. It's all called Gehenna all together. So paradise and death are in one place. It's the realm of the dead, and that's what's referred to there in the book of Isaiah. Okay. But when you read that story of Lazarus and the rich man, he is literally being held by Abraham, and they said, Father Abraham, Lazarus says, "Can you send," or the rich man, "Can you send Lazarus over?" And he was in torment, and we're told that there is a great divide in between the two. You can't come over here, and we can't go over there. And I think one of the things of torment of that hell that was there was their ability to actually see over into paradise what they did not choose. It's a choice. And they could see the error of their choice. That ended up being part of their torment.
Right.
I'm just going to be the fact check guy tonight because everything that you say is like so referenceable. I just want to make sure that we're being like very precise.
That's fine.
But anyway, I got it pulled up here. It looks more like it would be pronounced Gehenna. It's G-E-H.
Gehenna. Yeah, there you go.
But anyway, it says it's a specific valley near Jerusalem associated with child sacrifices of the day and later used to symbolize God's judgment and the place of punishment for the ungodly. So.
Well, let me ask you this question, because I'd like to unshroud some of the story here. Is this jealousy? Is this what brought this on? That Lucifer saw the love that God had for man and felt jealous because he was created first. And what does he mean about descending, or I think if I'm quoting you right, what you said, to the mountain of the gods, right? What does that mean specifically?
Well, I'm not. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. The mountain of the gods.
Getting off into inductive Bible study realm.
Yeah.
Quick
We're doing that, and I, what the realm that you have grabbed is so huge. I haven't, I can't say that. I'd have to really get into it, hone into that scripture,
scope it down.
So I really can't say, and I don't want to put any emphasis there so that I don't mislead anybody. But
problem.
Your first part, what caused that jealousy? That is a great question. There's a lot of there's a couple of ways of thinking about it, of what is first. Everybody will tell. A lot of people come out that the first sin is called rebellion against God. Okay, we just flat out rebel. But I've had one person that would take it even another step, and they would say lack of faith.
Okay.
And you go, lack of faith. Well, yeah, you obviously did not believe God was who God was. Mm-hmm. And that would be the whole reason why you would rebel against him, because you didn't accept it.
Sure.
And so you take those two things, that's to the point of what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
That's a real hard one. Was it the lack of faith that caused the rebellion, or did the rebellion cause the lack of faith of who God was? Another thing really quick, you called him Lucifer.
Yes.
That may not be accurate.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yes. Let's disagree.
Okay.
This is what I wanted. Yes.
Okay. That may not be accurate because there are more references to Jesus being the morning star, son of the morning, than that is given. And that's exactly what Lucifer means, son of the morning.
Right.
Or morning star. And so there are more references to Jesus being that name. And so wouldn't it be just a funny thing? He wants to deceive everybody. He wants to be like Jesus. So in a sense, he would love it if somebody would give him that name, because therefore then that would make him, and people would be saying, oh, Lucifer, Lucifer, son of the morning, you're talking to me? How deceiving.
Right. Yeah, no, I can see that.
And if you do a really deep dive Bible study into that, this isn't actually even a Bible study. It's actually a linguistic study into the origin of Lucifer. There really isn't much tie to Satan being called. It doesn't happen until the KJV comes out into the 1500s, and it kind of sets that Satan is called Lucifer. Now, we can always go back to Satan, because Satan just means adversary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, why did that happen then? The name Lucifer be attributed to
the
Satan?
One reference, Chris read it, Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is even somewhat. It's not that the Bible is being discredited. What's really going on is our ability to translate is what is being, and until the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's what actually kind of brought this out, that maybe his name isn't Lucifer. Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947 ended up giving us a little bit different look of the different ways that that's used. And it's like, actually, Jesus is the bright and morning star. He is the day star. He is the son of the morning. wow, where did we get that? And it goes back to the translation of the King James version.
I've got a
Which,
great
by the
article.
way, I have been been in places where it's like there's only if the King James was good enough for Peter and Paul, that's the only book that we should be reading. I've actually heard people say that.
I've got a great article pulled up here for you, Brandon. It's a 3-part sermon. It's written by a guy named Philip W. Shields, which goes over everything that Dad's alluding to here. I can include it in the show notes for this episode if people want to go back, and it's chock full of references, and it talks all about the linguistic theft of the name Lucifer, where in the original Hebrew the word was actually, I'm going to butcher this, Hallel.
Hallel.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll include this in the show notes if people want to go and deep dive on that that point alone. But
no, that's interesting to me. I've actually always thought that the title Morning Star sounded more grand than what he deserved. And when you think of the morning star, I think of the sun is what I think about, because that's the star that comes up every morning and goes down every evening, right? So there's a lot of significance there as well. But this is kind of why I wanted to have the conversation there about like the origin story, so to speak, because there is so much about that I think sounds like people still debate on and can't quite agree on the linguistics or the history or whatever about it. And I think it's so important to try to understand the origin story, because you got to know where this begins, right, to sort of really understand why it is the way it is, and especially today, to hear about his jealousy over man and getting cast out of heaven, and now he's again, like, I'm going to say things that I know are probably wrong, so forgive me. Like he's ruling over the earth, right? And is that accurate to say? Like with the the idea too, like people have about the Nephilim and that relationship, if those are indeed the children of these fallen angels that were thrown out of heaven.
The Bible says that, yeah.
Yes, right. Can we talk about that a little bit? I know that's something, if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind. The only thing is the greatest source of information about Nephilim is actually not from our Bible. The greatest source of Nephilim is actually from the book of Enoch. And there's way more references and understanding of where Nephilim come from. Some of these Nephilim are in the Bible. We think of giants when they say Nephilim, but also in the it would be somewhere between 3,000 2,500 BC. You've got a giant that has 6 fingers and 6 toes. He's mentioned in the Bible. That's a really funny one.
In multiple places in 2 Samuel, by the way. It's not just Goliath of Gath that David fights that was said to have 6 fingers and 6 toes, but it's also referenced later during another scrap that the Hebrews at the time got into, and it said that one of the mighty men slayed. I'll look it up so I can provide you guys the references.
What do you think the significance of the 6 is, though? Why 6?
It's a deformity away from what God had made. Whatever God made, go back to the book of Genesis and the book of Beginnings, and when God finishes all of creation with man, in each one of the 5 days that God creates, He saw that everything was good. He gets done creating man, and this statement is made, and God saw that it was very good. And so you get to that. So basically there's a stamp of perfection that is put on what God has made. Now you end up taking somebody that has 6 fingers. It's trying to change what God made that was very good. Again, we're back to this, that what the Nephilim messed with, what the created messed with, was trying to become greater than the creator. But you see, I love this. In science, there's this one thing that is so awesome, and that is whatever man tries to monkey with what God made, everything ends up always finding a way to get back to homeostasis. We even have a word for it. Homeostasis. Okay. So you want to know what took COVID out? is that they take the protein, they try to stack it on top of this virus, and for some reason it can never last as it keeps regenerating. It doesn't regenerate with the protein on it. The virus finds a way to come back to homeostasis, and then it doesn't work anymore because it's lost what they tried to end up doing with it. It did its damage, but
it's gain of function.
Yes. Right. But it's amazing. And everything that we try to prove here again, we're trying to say that it's not God's way. And yet God always gets the last laugh on it because he's put within the DNA of everything that he made that it will come back to the way he made it.
Right.
Now, that's a God thing.
Yeah.
Because according to man, oh, no, we should be able to change this. We should be able to alter this, and it should be able to stay.
Right.
But even with mRNA and the technology that they tried to do with the mRNA, what ends up happening is that the message that is given, whatever, is a problem and can get in there. But over time, it still loses it because it was artificial to the systems that they put the mRNA in. It comes back to homeostasis, and that is absolutely, it'll kill out people, but all in all, when it ends up happening, it will still not pass down, so many generations as it gets eradicated out.
Well, just jumping back in here with your references, since you wanted to reference the giants with 6 fingers and 6 toes, this is 2 Samuel chapter 21, and in verse 20 it says, in another battle with the Philistines at Gath, they encountered a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. I can add, thank you, Bible, who was also a descendant.
That's multiplying, dude, not just adding. It's the associative processes.
Well, if my math is bad, it's because you taught it to me. But when he defied and taunted Israel, he was killed by Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shemiah. These 4 Philistines were descendants of the giants of Gath, but David and his warriors killed them. So that's the other reference in the Old Testament.
So for those people out there, because I also have a love of biblical archaeology, I just want you to know that they have found the grave of Goliath of Gath, but they will not admit that it is his grave, because when they found his name, Goliath just means great. And so even though it was a giant of a man, and even though all the plates that they found in his house were of massive size in order to go with a person his size, all that kind of stuff there, when they found all that, they will just tell you, well, we don't know that it's Goliath of Gath, and Goliath just means great. Right. So it's just a great man.
Just discrediting it.
Yeah. The archaeology will do everything that they possibly can.
Like, what modern country was it found in?
It's found in Philistine country in modern day Israel.
Okay.
More over towards the Gaza Strip, over on the far, that's the west side of Israel, heading toward the Mediterranean Sea, in an area that is defined as being the city of Gath. They found the gates to the city.
Well, let me ask you this, right? So the idea, what I've learned about the idea of original sin is knowledge, right? And eating of the tree of knowledge. And what I've learned about the Nephilim, or heard about the Nephilim, is that they taught the humans that they were around that how to do things, how to grow food, how to use makeup. These are things that I've heard people discuss in the Book of Enoch. I've not read them myself. So it's just like they were giving them knowledge, I guess, which do you think leads them down the path further away from God because they're doing things on their own rather than looking towards God for help and knowledge and all these things? Like, is that the beginning of the deception, so to speak, on Earth? Do you think? Does that question make sense, or am I just sort of off base? It makes sense,
but you're not finishing the phrase of what they actually partook of.
Okay.
They partook of the tree of good and knowledge of.
Forgive me.
Yeah, they partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Good and evil, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's not just they partook of knowledge. Knowledge within itself is not good or evil. It's knowledge. But they knew the difference between good and evil. Well, as soon as you know the difference between the two, you are subject to make a choice. Chris, a long time ago, and I've been talking about this skit for a long time. I told somebody about it today. So there's a guy sitting on the back of a chair. See if you can imagine.
Why my ears are ringing.
And he's sitting there reading a book. Another fella comes up to the guy sitting on a chair, and he says, "Here, hold this," and he hands him the end of the rope, and he starts walking around him. And the guy says, "What are you doing?" And what does the guy say, Chris?
I'm the devil. I'm going to tie you up and take you to hell.
But I don't believe in the devil.
Okay. Great.
And he keeps on tying him up. And the guy stops and he says, "What are you doing?"
I'm the devil. I'm tying you up and I'm taking you to hell. We've done this.
But I
before,
told you I
tell?
don't believe in you.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect.
This is a good scenario. The whole point that is a great example by itself, but it's the end of the skit that is really trying to make the point, and that is that so the guy gets here and he goes, "Look, over there, that's supposed to be your property over there. Behind me is God's property." And the guy says, the devil goes, "Yeah, that is absolutely true." He says, "So that's why I'm just going to stay right here on this fence." He says, "But I own the fence too."
Mm-hmm.
See, no decision is still a decision.
Yeah.
And the knowledge that it comes between good and evil now says choose one or the other.
Right.
And even no choice is a choice. And you know, one of the doctrines of demons that is out there is a group of people that are teaching right now that God is so sovereign that you really don't even have a choice. He's either selected you or he hasn't selected you. And
right.
That's just the way that life is. You either get heaven or hell. God selected it. That's it.
Is that Calvinism?
Yes, it is. Good call. I wasn't going to say that, but you know, let it be what it's be what it is. But there are people. That's the doctrine of demons. Because listen, did you choose to get up this morning?
Yes.
Yes, you did. I don't know what else you might have chosen
By the grace of
today,
God, he
but
woke me up and I got out of bed on my own.
and how many other choices have you made today?
A lot.
Tons. Life is full of choices. To say that there is no choice takes away the very nature of this world. The very first thing that ever happened was God put them in front of the tree and said, "Hey, here's something I don't want you to do." And when they partook, all of a sudden they had the knowledge of good and evil. Now, what are you going to choose?
That's almost
and it all starts right there. And guess who was in the tree to make to make it enticing? Mm-hmm. You know this, because as soon as you know this, now you're in my territory. And now all he does is make accusations. He deceives. Right. This is it. He just tears up and destroys the humans, the very thing that God loved. And that's how he does it. Now, sometimes it is just playing with your mind. Sometimes it's just, you know what? I get you so busy, I don't want you to think about God. Sometimes it's, boom, he comes out into the open and he will just scare the living daylights out of you. Or some people, he'll make it seem like that he is a God and he'll say, "Worship me." He has many, many different forms. In fact, the Bible, book of Hebrews, but I could be wrong here, Chris. He appears as an angel of light. Mm-hmm. He will just look that good, but the idea is he is just that deceptive, and that to make evil look like good. Tell me, how silver-tongued is that? But he had to be pretty silver-tongued because 1/3 of the angels followed him out of heaven. Mm-hmm. Now, how good can that be? They're all standing in front of God, the Father himself, at the throne. But he was good enough to say, "Hey, guys, I'm going to take over the old man's throne. Follow me and I'll give you places." Mm-hmm. He was able to do that.
You're sorry, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to. I found a reference here in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. It says, "But I am not surprised." This is Paul speaking, obviously. "But I am not surprised. Even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is no wonder that his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. In the end, they will get the punishment their wicked deeds deserve."
Yeah. So what you said about the devil there saying, now you know the difference and now you're in my territory. Like it sounds like sort of the jump into sentience, and if you bear with me on this, right? So people are, to your AI reference earlier, people talk about AGI and then super intelligence, two different things, and then the obvious reference or the obvious comparison is AI reaching sentience, right? To your point about creator and created, the sentience that humans got from knowing, I guess, the difference between good and evil, is to know what God created, and that knowledge that they weren't supposed to have, but were tempted into having. We don't have that power. We're not God. We're not like God. So we can't gift, I guess, artificial intelligence, sentience, to get to the point you were talking about before that people are worried about happening eventually. That sentience that you're referring to just can't happen because we cannot provide that truly to something we created. Does that sort of make sense?
That is absolutely correct. When artificial intelligence, or maybe even sentience, once it reaches to the place where it takes a life of its own, that is because the enemy has infused it with his knowledge that is literally centuries, millennia old.
Right.
And that's when you take a look at it and you go, burn it.
Yeah.
burn it down. This is evil. But the book of Revelations talks about that. There's going to be a statue that's literally going to come to life. So robotics, whatever, with AI, when that happens, it will be a demonically infused one, and it will rise above man, but there's a reason why.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So to sort of stick with trying to if you can chronologically do this, right, map this whole thing out. The ruling over the earth, does that literally mean ruling over human beings, ruling over the domain of the earth? I don't think it does, but can you sort of flesh out what that means when people call the devil he's ruling over the earth, so to speak?
Chris, somewhere between Revelations 13 and Revelations 14, if you can give that a really quick reference.
I'm in Revelations 13 right now.
Okay.
I pulled it up because the verse in here that you were referencing just a second ago was verse 15, and it says, "He was then permitted to give life to this statue so that it could speak. Then the statue of the beast commanded that anyone refusing to worship must die."
Okay, see how he will give life to it?
Yeah.
Okay, and that'll be beyond human. But somewhere between 13 and 14, it literally tells us that he will make war with the saints and he will overcome them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on it.
Okay, if you can find us that reference. And so, yes, one of the misnomers, there are wonderful Christian people out there, but this is not a true teaching. That they will try to tell you it's like, well, with Christ, we will conquer, we will overcome, we will be able to do all this, and we put the devil underneath our feet. No, there will be a time when the end times come that actually we're going to get our butt kicked. And it's going to be kicked bad. We're going to lose. Mm-hmm. Okay, I know that everybody likes to say, Romans with Paul, we are more than conquerors. Well, read it in context, what we are more than conquerors in. But when it comes to this world, when the end times come, we lose. Okay, we'll lose our life. We'll lose a lot of stuff. You got the reference, Chris?
Yeah, I'm just going to read this block because it's all one big
It's
thought.
a block. It is a block, yes.
It illustrates what you said. So this is still in Revelations chapter 13, beginning in verse 3. "I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. They worshipped the dragon for giving the beast such power, and they also worshipped the beast. Who is as great as the beast, they exclaimed. Who is able to fight against him? Then the beast was allowed to speak great blasphemies against God, and he was given authority to do whatever he wanted for 42 months. Very specific time frame. And he spoke terrible words of blasphemy against God, slandering his name and his dwelling. That is, those who dwell in heaven. And the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And he was given authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all the people who belonged to this world worshipped the beast. They are the ones whose names were not written in the book of life that belongs to the Lamb who was slaughtered before the world was made. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Anyone who is destined for prison will be taken to prison. Anyone who is destined to die by the sword will die by the sword.
Okay. And so we're not going to win. And so there's this thing out there. Oh, yes, we will. Yes, we will. And you just read right there that there's going to be a time period where we're going to lose. And
I missed the
people
one
are
last
going to
verse.
die.
I apologize. It was below the screen. This means that God's holy people must endure persecution patiently and remain faithful. I missed that last. That's important.
That's very important.
Sorry.
And so all of this and how evil is evil. You know, that's what we're getting to. And then I can't help but keep going back to, okay, guys, people, everybody else out there, listen, have you ever thought about how God feels? I love you. I have done all these things for you. I scream out your name. I'll talk to you in the middle of the night. I'll have my goodness that will go towards you. If you will just turn to me, I will rescue you. And when you die, you will find your life again. If you lose your life, you'll pick it up. If it's in me, you'll live forever. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. And that's the rescuing that we're talking about. And yet people will either ignore, deny, or the enemy just flat out gets to entice them to say, hey, worship me. And the whole idea is he doesn't care how he destroys you. He doesn't care if he comes out into the open and scares the pee water out of you, or if he hides behind every bush and just messes with your mind. It doesn't matter. The idea is you're destroyed. He claims your soul, and he keeps you away from God, and he laughs at God the Father in his face, because it's up to us to choose. That's the very first thing. You say you wanted to go to the origin. There's the origin. That's what it's about.
Right. And I got one more reference here for you too, Brandon, just to your question about whether or not Satan actually owns the world, right? The idea that he is the father of this world, right? It says about him. This is in Matthew chapter 4, so this is the temptation of Jesus, beginning in verse 8. It says, next the devil took him to the peak of a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. I will give it all to you, he said, if you will kneel down and worship me. Get out of here, Satan, Jesus told him, for the scriptures say you must worship the Lord your God and serve only him. Then the devil went away and the angels came and took care of Jesus. And the reason I bring this one up is because it's what the scripture doesn't say here that leads into your point. And it doesn't say that Jesus refutes that the devil owns all these things to give to him. Yeah. He just says leave because you must worship the Lord your God and serve only him. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't refute the devil's claim. And just to show you how interactive the Bible is, he says leave. James says resist the devil and he will flee from you. Mm-hmm. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, Chris. Yep, I'm on it. All right. Again, back to answering your question, who is the God of this world? And in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, it tells us that the God of this world, and when you look at how they spell the word God, it very intently, it is with a little g.
Right. Yes, not big G.
Right. It's should be within the first 2 or 3 verses of it. Do you have it?
I'm reading through it right now.
Oh, okay. 2 Corinthians chapter 4.
You got me speed reading.
Yeah. If our gospel is hid.
Okay. You guys can move on. When I find it, I'll get back to you.
So
Okay.
Then let's do this, right? Trying to understand the origins of this.
Sorry, verse 3.
Nope,
yeah, if the good news we preach is hidden behind a veil, it is hidden only from people who are perishing. Satan, who is the God, little g, of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God.
And there, it also tells you, Brandon, the power that he has. He can blind eyes.
Right. So I'll ask you this question because I know that there's an opposite end of this that's relevant to this. So God created angels. Why did he create them, and what was their purpose? I know there's a hierarchy. I know these may sound like loaded questions. I'm not as knowledgeable as you guys, so
No, it wasn't like that at all, brother.
Yeah, they have a purpose, right? And
Right.
I just, why did God create angels? What was their purpose? And, the hierarchy, I know there's some debate on like whose hierarchy is accurate, because there's not an actual hierarchy in the Bible, correct? Of angels, like specifically doesn't like lay them out the way.
Well, we are told that Michael and I'm trying to think of his name, Gabriel. We are told that these are archangels. We are told that there's an angel that Joshua sees, and he says, "I am a captain of the Lord of hosts."
Christophany?
No, that is not. No, he says, "I am a captain of the Lord of hosts." So no, that
Okay.
one's not a Christophany. We see in other places where there are seraphim and cherubim, and they have specific things that they do in heaven, and they are different looking creatures. They have 6 wings that they fly with. There is another creature that has many, many eyes on it. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. So there are different creatures that God has in the heavenlies that perform things for him. But when you get to the realm of the angels, it seems that there are messenger angels, there are warrior angels.
Yeah, I have the one pulled
there's
up
a
in Daniel for you.
hierarchy. What's that?
I have the one pulled up in Daniel for you if you want to reference it.
Okay. There is a hierarchy to these angels, and so therefore they perform things for God on earth and things in heaven that we're not even aware of. And so when they fell, the hierarchy went with them. Satan knew what their rankings were, and so we are aware that there are angels, fallen angels, that are considered princes and are given regions in order to rule over. Is that what you have in Daniel?
I do, yeah.
The Prince of Persia?
Yep.
Okay. And so what he's about ready to read,
game.
there's a messenger, the Prince of Persia, the very high-ranking angel, grabs him to withhold the information because he's a messenger angel, so he's supposed to be giving a message. And Michael, is it Michael that rescues him, or is it Gabriel?
It's Michael.
Michael, okay, comes down and rescues him. Go ahead and give us a story out of God's Word.
It's almost like I know where you're getting ready to go with these references, so I can jump out in front of you. So this is Daniel chapter 10, beginning in verse 4. It says, "On the 24th day of the first month, I was by the great Tigris River." I've been there.
Ever been over there? I was just going to ask you.
When I looked up, I saw a man dressed in linen, and he had a belt made of gold from... this is why you don't read Bible in front of people without practicing pronunciations. Uphaz, around his waist. His body was like beryl. His face looked like lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms and legs looked like polished bronze. When he spoke, his voice sounded like the roar of a crowd. I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision. The men with me didn't see the vision, yet they started to tremble violently, and they quickly hid themselves. So I was left alone to see this grand vision. I had no strength left in me. My face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. I heard the man speak, and as I listened to his words, I fainted face down on the ground. Then a hand touched me and made my hands and knees shake. The man said to me, Daniel, you are highly respected. Pay attention to my words. Stand up, because I have been sent to you. When he said this to me, I stood up trembling. He told me, don't be afraid, Daniel. God has heard everything that you said ever since the first day you decided to humble yourself in front of your God so that you could learn to understand things. I have come in response to your prayer. The commander of Persia, this is the NLT, so it says the commander of Persia, but in other versions it'll say the prince of Persia. The commander of the Persian kingdom opposed me for 21 days, but then Michael, one of the chief commanders, came to help me because I was left alone with the kings of Persia. I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the last days, because the vision is about times still to come.
There you go. And that description of the messenger angel is very close to the description of Christ at the beginning of the book of Revelation. So, we're getting into these. So there are heavenly angels that work, that are around the throne of God, that do things for God. But you asked, why were angels created? The warrior angels, messenger angels, they basically to do service and work for God. And then there were worshiping angels, because there is constant worship around God. And do you know who the lead worshiper was?
Do I? I don't. Sorry.
This lead one that we call Satan.
Okay.
He literally performed worship. So if you want to know, so we remember, angels have attitudes like we do. God created them very, very much like us. So when we see us, angels, except they are in the spirit realm and don't take on the flesh that we do. Okay? And so literally Satan stood before the throne of God, the most beautiful, the most talented of any of the angels that God created, and he led worship. He led all of the rest of heaven in order to praise God. Now, get that image. He stands between the throne and those in front of him in order to praise the one that's behind him. Guess what's hitting him while everybody's giving that praise? So can you see what would well up in your heart? I want this praise. Why aren't that kind of thing? I'm gonna defer to Chris for just a second on this whole issue of what it is to stand up in front and to lead people in worship, and not you. You don't take it. You have to be humble so that can happen. Chris, you got anything you want to throw in on that? What that emotion is like, and to have it there?
Well, I don't think that
or not to have it.
I've never talked about this on the podcast before. Really, what I did largely before joining the military, but I was a paid worship leader, and that was actually what I went to Bible school. I was a biblical studies and a worship major, and I had aspirations of being a musician and leading worship, and that's what I wanted to do. And ultimately, I had a hard time divorcing that from myself. I'll just say it. I fell too much in love with the spotlight and standing there, and then I knew it was something that God put inside my heart, that it was for me. If I continued there, I would not have been able. I would not have been able to not be a rock star. That was what I wanted, and it was something that God revealed to me down inside of myself, and that's one of the reasons that I knew that music was a talent that God gave me for a time. Now with my injured hand, I can barely play guitar anymore, so it's something that He's eventually taken away from me. But it was something that I had for a time, and it was something that I felt like God required me to sacrifice to Him, because that ultimately was what was going to be better for me. it was something that I needed to give up. If that makes any sense.
And let's get back to the evil of evilness. What truly is evil? That's, to take somebody and to take their talent and to mess with their minds and to mess with all this. How evil is that?
Yeah.
And to mess people up over those types of things. I mean, Chris talks about his hand. I blew out my knee at 17. I wanted to be a basketball player. I could grab the rim with two hands. I had a great shot. I could dominate anybody from up to almost 6'5" in defense. Okay, I have more than just the talent for the game. I also had the brains that went along to the game. Now, whether I would have ever gotten past college, because I'm 5'9". Let's face it. If you're going to play in the land of giants, you need to be a giant. Sure. But I definitely could have gotten myself further through with college, but God wanted to get me, and I ended up losing my knee. Now, a lot of people would end up saying, hey, one day I went up over top of a 6 foot whatever guy. I came down with the ball and I came down wrong. Boom. The weight went through the middle of my knee. I cleaned it out. Yeah. And, so I went from immediately grabbing the rim with two hands at 5'9" to not being able to swat the bottom of the net. Right. Couldn't do it. I was done.
No hops.
And what's that?
No hops.
Yeah, no. And you definitely don't play ball without hops. And some people would say, oh, God did that to you. That was cruel. No, that's actually called grace and mercy. I can't believe how I may have destroyed myself. I can't begin to tell you the beautiful life that I have had. My oldest son, and being able to bond with him during that time, my twin boys. I can't begin to tell you my two beautiful daughters and how my family. I would do anything for my family, and God gave me one and gave me a great one at that. But if I would have been running around the world playing basketball, I wouldn't have a family. The things that he has done for me, the miracles that I have saw, the things that he has brought me through, in order to have the hand of God upon me, I can't begin to tell you how all of that has happened. But if he would have allowed me to have my knee and to have my way, I would have been destroyed. Mm-hmm. No doubt in my mind. Because I'm one of those guys that jumps in up to here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When did you first get involved with demons, I guess, and the idea of exorcism? Obviously, I feel like if you're a pastor, like, you're involved with it anyway. You're putting yourself in that position. I feel like that you're gonna put a target on your back to make it your life's work to talk about God, that they're going to come for you, right? Yeah. When did you make that decision that you wanted to, I guess, take it a step further and involve yourself in that specifically?
You don't decide, God calls you.
Okay.
And everybody needs to understand that first. If you are not a chosen warrior to do it, you don't do it.
Yeah, fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
Fear to tread. Yeah, that's exactly it. So I was 14. I was struggling really, really hard with lust issues. And there was a trailer behind my mom and dad's house that during the summertime, it was too hot to sleep upstairs in the house. There was no insulation. When the sun would beat down, came right through, and the rooms would just heat up. Right. So I got to go out there and to sleep in the camper, and was doing that. I did that for like 2 or 3 summers. And I was 14 years old, and I was struggling with these issues of lust, whatever. And I was just like, God, I can't do it. And it was just temptations and all this other kind of stuff. And one particular night, I was seriously close. I had a young lady that was tempting me. And I don't know what got a hold of me, but I turned around and I just ran and I jumped in the trailers, like, just go to bed, into the camper, and just go to bed. And as soon as I entered into the camper, there was in front of me the largest, blackest being that was just hulking in there. And it so struck fear in me that I immediately went down to the floor. And it was funny, the doors to the back, you were like, well, why didn't you just jump out of the thing or whatever? I couldn't move. I just fell to the floor. This thing laughed at me like, all I have to do is this. I got you. You're such a peon. Not that I heard him say a word, but I just knew that.
Right.
And all I could do was cry out to Jesus Christ, save me. Now, I come years later to understand that little experience was like having a sniff of something or a taste of something. It's like once you smell it, taste it, I know what that is.
Right.
That was the whole reason that God allowed that night. I knew who Satan was. I knew what it was like to be in his presence, and I was no match for him. And that's the whole reason why God gave me that experience. And I've never forgotten that experience. That came into play later in my life. I was working with juveniles, and I was in an unlocked facility, and we had this little 65-pound kid that decided to go bouncing off the walls. And my staffer, he was 6'2", 260 some pounds, Big Dave, they called him. And he's like, "I'm going to take care of this kid." And you knew when he went for his ring, he had his class ring. When he went for his ring, he took it off because we were about ready to do a physical takedown.
Right.
So I took the kids to bed, and we had a door that swung, very silent, but it swung. It was a two-way door. And Dave corralled him into the living room where there was a carpet. And as soon as he got him over the carpet, boom, this big dude took this little 65-pound kid down for a takedown. It was textbook, but this kid drug him all over the carpet. He could not control this 65-pound kid. This kid almost whooped his butt. It was supernatural. And finally, he got him to settle down, and I mean just drenched in sweat and everything else. He's on top of the kid, and he settled down. I put all the rest of the kids away, but you always watch your partner because you got his back, right? So the kid can't make an accusation against him. And so once I got the kids into bed, I came in and I opened up that other door, and there, the couch that we had, it had a dust cover that went all the way down to the shag carpet that was on the floor, whatever. So the kid couldn't see me, didn't know that I was there. And Dave is just drenched in sweat. This kid has had him all over the floor. And this kid cried out, "Eric, help me." Dave looked up. He looked over. He didn't know that I was there. And he's like, "I don't know what you two got going on, but you can deal with him now. I'm out of here." It so freaked him out that that kid knew that I was there, or the spirit that was in him knew that I was there. And as soon as that kid cried out, you know, that little incident that I had, and I said, you knew, you had the taste, so you know what's going on. Yeah, my brain went, this is not human. This is supernatural. Right. And I knew what it was. And the first thing that I did is when I walked up to the kid, now that I am not just a born-again Christian, but living a godly life so that there's not sin on me that the enemy can use against me, I walked up to him and I said, "In the name of Christ, you stay on that floor and you don't get up."
Right.
And he did. And when Dave saw that, he's like, "That's it, I'm done." And he went and he locked himself in our staff office. And I'm left out there with this little 65-pound kid. Yeah. Which I'm not afraid of because I've learned how to conquer that fear. But it can still scare you because a few years after that, I was involved in an incident where a possessed woman came after me, and and it started with a phone call, and when I picked up the phone, the demon's voice came across the phone. It had meter, it had diction, but I couldn't understand the language. And I said, and when it did, it so got me. I mean, my hands started shaking.
Yeah.
Okay. It just struck a kind of fear, and I didn't see it coming, didn't know it was coming. And I stopped and I said, in the name of Christ, you speak to me in English. Who are you and what do you want? And it said, I am Satan and I'm coming to kill you. And she did show up at my house later on that night.
Whoa.
And we had a very, very long night. And Chris will remember the night because earlier that day we were at a radio station and he got to do his first radio spot.
Oh, man.
This is Christian Hit Radio. Yes, FM. I
That
did
was
good,
it.
right, Dad? I did good, right, Dad?
Yeah, that was the radio station that we were at.
Why?
He got to do his first radio spot that morning. And,
Why did she call you?
Huh?
Why did she call
She
you?
called me because she had, while she still had control, she was talking to me about suicide and that she wanted to kill herself. And it was an attendee of our church at the time. And I flat out said, that is of Satan because he wants you to destroy yourself. He doesn't care, again, what I told you. He doesn't care how he destroys you. He wants you destroyed. And I said, so are you going to rebuke Satan? And all of a sudden her voice went, I, and right down it went. I can't
Holy
even do
cow.
it. And then it blurted out at me what it said. I called it out, and we'd been praying and fasting. I knew that there was a demonic problem. Nobody had ever taught me. They don't teach this in Bible college. And we had to learn it on our own and to get a hold of books. And I had a mentor at the time that was likewise who had fought some of these battles, and so had to learn things, him and I just talking and talking and talking. And I thank God for people like Larry, and he did that for me. And so, yeah, he was my mentor. And that's where we learned this stuff. And it's you have to pay attention. And that night, that boy that was on the floor of the group home prayed, and I have had people healed underneath of me instantaneously, but I have not ever had a true exorcism, an accomplished exorcism, and I'm more than sad. What would be the word I'm looking for? I mourn the fact that I did not help those people and could not help those people in order for that to happen. But part of having a successful exorcism is being a part of having people who want to have the demon cast out of them. Mm-hmm. If you're using that demon for power and for strength, that demon's, you think you're using that demon's actually using you.
Right.
And if you don't want to relinquish that control, if you don't want to get rid of that power, you can't. There's a point of wanting to have it. But we're back to choosing again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why did that spirit go after that child?
Most likely, I don't know, but remember, I got a child that's in a group home, and I would probably say most likely that child was offered as a sacrifice. So the demon had legal right to be there because parentally he was offered.
Okay, so this is actually an interesting topic because I've heard this before. I listened to a podcast a long time ago, and the man who was giving it, he was a Catholic priest, and he was talking about the way that parents communicate to children, and that parents need to be very careful about the things that they say. And one of the things he said was that when parents say, GD you, or GD that, you know what I mean when I say GD?
Absolutely.
That actually has power. It's not just an obscenity that you're saying, right? And that you actually are offering up indirectly or directly, you think you're not doing it, but that you are offering up your child by doing that and saying that you're opening them up. Maybe not offering is the right word, but opening them up to spiritual attack by saying things like that. So when you say that child was a sacrifice, right? Do you think, does that mean literally his parents did something spiritually, whatever you want to call it, right, to offer their child up? Or is this something that, like, the sins of the parents, so to speak, cause this indirectly? Does that sort of make sense?
It very much makes sense. You're asking the right question, and the answer is both, or a combination of either or. Chris, take a look at Exodus chapter 20, where the 10 Commandments are, and it tells about one of the commandments, talks about that the curses will go down to the third and fourth generation.
On it.
And
I did find something while I'm getting ready to pull that up, and I will pull that up. I was over here doing some research because you made the statement that you were fasting earlier that day, or heading into that story.
Actually, we've been fasting over a couple of weeks during that time.
So I went to go pull up the Bible verse in Matthew chapter 17 where Jesus tells his disciples, this is what's very interesting, what I found, right? So it's Jesus heals a boy with a demon. So beginning in verse 14, it says, when they came to the crowd, a man came up to him and kneeling before him said, said, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he has seizures and he suffers terribly, for often he falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. And Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him. And the boy was healed instantly. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, why could we not cast it out? This is verse 20. He said to them, because of your little faith, for truly I say to you, if you have faith like the grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible to you. And then it skips from verse 20 to verse 22. And they were gathering in Galilee. And verse 21 is omitted. And it's been omitted. Why? And I'm trying to figure that out. That's why I'm bringing it up. So this is the ESV. I went to the NLT. I went to the NIV. And it's omitted in all of these.
Want me to tell you why?
Versions. So I had to go look it up specifically.
Because
and there's
it says this kind only comes out by
prayer and fasting. And I had to go figure in the NASB. It has that verse added back.
Not removed. It's been added into the King James.
Okay.
It's not that the other ones removed it. It's that the King James added it.
Okay.
Interesting.
Because I'm like, I knew that was in there.
Who love to talk about how accurate the King James is, and
so
it's the
not
only Bible.
Biblical.
So it's not that it's inaccurate. What they do is that the King James, when they translated the King James, they wanted to make it congruent all the way through all the Gospels, so that the teachings of Jesus would be congruent. Yeah. But they weren't accurate to the they translated it from the Codex. It wasn't accurate to what the exact Codex has said, but the scholars that translated it made it accurate across all the ones. So it said it in one or the other ones, or it's implied in another codex, so they put it in there so that it was congruent. But then all of a sudden they realized when we started getting to translations that happened in the 40s, and then the NIV in the 70s, and all this other kind of stuff, it's like, let's be more accurate to what exactly that codex said. Another thing that happens in that particular vein is when you go to Matthew and you hear the Lord's Prayer, it's start me off with Father, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. In earth, it's actually in earth, not on earth, but in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. You go to that same one, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. You go over to the Gospel of Mark, and you read it in the Gospel of Mark, and it stops at the end of give us this day our daily bread.
Right.
In the Codex. In the King James, they go ahead and finishing it on out so that it is congruent with what is said in Matthew.
I'm really glad that we stumbled onto this, because this is a thing that trips a lot of Christians, and like specifically new Christians up that don't spend a lot of time like in the Bible. And a lot of people will go to like the Christian bookstore and then just be, I
don't want that Bible. It ain't got everything.
No, I was going to say they'll be like overwhelmed when they start looking at all the different translations and like, what do I read? I don't understand. Hannah actually gave a talk on this the other day at her Bible study and asked me to help her proof her slideshow. Is the only reason it's like forefront in my brain, but she did such a good job on it. But it really comes down to there's two kind of ends of the spectrum when the Bible is translated, especially for the modern translations in English. Bible was originally translated into German for anybody that if the Western languages, just if you want to. But anyway,
the Bible was originally translated into Greek. It's the
no, I said of the Western languages.
Western language. Okay, I didn't hear that. My bad.
German before English. But anyway, you have what's called
Mr. Luther.
Yeah, you have what's called dynamic translations on the one side, and that means like thought for thought. So what these translations aim for is they read into the text and they're trying to dig into like what is the behind the words meaning that the Bible is trying to get across, and then they'll use modern language to most closely represent or re-give you that thought based on your modern understanding of English. Like this is what they're saying to you, this is what Jesus meant when he said this, and we're going to use modern words to most closely represent what he was meaning when he said this, which that can get you into some really murky territory because it's like Jesus
really this many thousand years later, and you can tell me what Jesus was meaning.
And Hebrew, Hebrew and Latin and Greek, for anybody that's studied the original biblical languages, knows that like these are highly contextual languages, right? Which is why inductive Bible study is so important. This word said in this manner, in this story, refers to like Jesus was very specific in what he said and when he said it. And then on the other side, you have what's called literal translations. And these are word for word translations that go straight back to, they skip over like the KJV in the middle, they skip over the Gutenberg Bible, and they go straight back to the actual Hebrew text, and they go word for word. What does that word mean in Hebrew? And then here's the English literal translation of that word, and they do that all the way through. So it's like on the one side, you would see like the ESV, which is one of the reasons I really like to use it, word for word translation into modern English. And then on the other side, I started with tonight would be like the Message Bible by Eugene Peterson, which is a highly dynamically translated Bible. It reads like a fiction book, but that's because they're trying, he tried to go through and be like, well, this is what I think that this is what the author meant when he was saying this, and so I'll use modern language to represent that. But that's just kind of a primer for anybody out there, so they don't get overwhelmed when they're looking. And there's places where you can go online and you could just look at, hey, I like this Bible. Is it dynamically translated or is it literally translated for anybody out there that wants that information?
Go ahead.
I want to go back to the woman. What happened? You said she said that she was going to come over to kill you, and that she did show up at your house. What happened?
Well, before she showed up at my house, a family member called me. Well, so she was a caretaker of a woman, and the woman
was a caretaker of another woman.
Yes, and she called me from that who she was taking care of. She called me from her house. She had stolen about 10 opioids. 10 pills. I can't remember, but they were in the line of Vicodin. And she killed about 10 of those. Then I found out that she went over to her sister's house. Her sister called me, and you could hear her in the background. Sounded like a gorilla just tearing up things. And she's like, Pastor, she's here. Well, I can say her name. She's passed away now. Mary's here, and I can't... I can't get her to do anything. I said, what does she want? And the woman had to confess to me that she had a liquor closet. And she's like, she's in my liquor closet. And she killed a quart of JD. And on top of the Vicodin.
Yeah, dangerous.
A Vicodin that she should have OD'd on.
Yeah.
And she should have been on the floor not breathing.
Correct. Okay. And So anyway, and then I got a call from her husband. Her husband said she's on her way over to where you are, and by that time it's dark. Now I was up at 4:30 that morning because we had to drive in, and I needed to be at the radio station at 5:30 because there was a devotional that I was doing live on air. And the first one was at 5:30, and the second one was at 6:30. No, it was at 6:30, and then the second one was at 7:30 in the morning during the drive time. And that's how Chris ended up getting on radio, because I took him with me. And so
you got me into a lot of trouble over the years.
Whatever you do, stay with the car.
That's an inside story. We don't tell that one.
And so this was about midnight that she ends up coming over to the house. And we have a little garage. Our freezer is out there, and she tried to take her car and ram it into the freezer. But as she did, something stopped the car. The rear end of the car came up and sat back down really hard. I believe that was angels that stopped her car. And so then it's midnight, and she just laid on the horn. And we've got neighbors and everything else. And my wife said, you got to stop her. I mean, they're going to end up calling the police. This is going to end up being a scene. And I said, okay. I said, but you go in the front room. I need somebody to back me up. I go into the front room and raise the window so that you can hear what's going on. I need a witness. And I went out, and she went to go the car, and her husband drove up. There was an alley between the church and us, and he pulled up into the alley. I saw his headlights, and I knew it was him. And he came out, and when I came out of the house and approached the car, she started to get out of the car. He took his leg and put it up against the car door. I'm like, okay, you're her husband. You can do that. Yep. And was stood there, and I was in front of the window. And she tried to bite me, spit on me, scratch me, all these different things to do injurious things to me through the window. But the first thing that happened is once he put his leg up against that car door, all of a sudden we literally watched her. Now I can physically see her. All the other time she was on the phone, and all of a sudden she goes, and her voice just dropped, and the same thing, whatever was said to me on the phone, the same thing came out of her mouth right then and there. And I heard the window behind me just go shoop. My wife just, that was it. She closed the window. She was done.
That's enough.
She wasn't going to listen to anymore. And I'm like, I'm on my own. Oh. But what ended up happening is we were there for over an hour. So now we're heading into 1 o'clock. I'm almost going on 24 hours without sleep. And this episode was 6 hours long. It started 6 hours before. And so now here we are. She's physically at the house. And so I started praying. She reached up and grabbed onto the steering wheel. Mm-hmm. And as I started praying, she started shaking so violently, I literally thought she was going to rip the steering wheel off the column.
Yeah.
And so forth. But she did not want to let go of the demon, and the demon didn't want to let go from her. There's one of the stories about Jesus delivering somebody from a demon, and it says, as he is doing so, the demon tore him. I believe that's either an NIV or a King James description of how he had, or that he literally ripped the man as he came out, and the young man fell down as dead. And I think that's literally what we were seeing as we were praying for her to be delivered. That's what the convulsions were. That we were stirring something, but I didn't have whatever prayer I needed, strength. It wasn't faith. I'll tell you how it ended. But that's what I thought that we were seeing. I mean, it was literally tearing at her. spoke to her. Once it spoke to me, I did it again. I said, by the authority that I have in Christ. So I'll tell you how I was operating. You speak to me in English. What is your name? And Satan. And one of the things that you need to, that people need to understand about demons, they will identify by the destructive power that they have. So he was just my adversary. Do I think it was Satan himself? I have no idea.
Right.
Okay. But I do know this was my adversary. And that's what they were admitting to. And I said, why are you here? And a couple of things. Earlier that day, I went to go visit, and I saw her at the hospital. And when she would go to talk to me, she would look at me over top of her glasses. And that's because demons don't need glasses to see out of. And as the demon was looking through her eyes, needed to look over top of her glasses in order to see me clearly, because he doesn't need the glasses. And also tried to get inside my head. I shook the family's hand as I was leaving, visiting their loved one who had almost had a heart attack. And she grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. I literally had to peel my hand away from her. And so that was earlier that day. That night, she said, "Do you remember when I had your hand?" And I said, "Yeah." And the demon said, "I tried to get into you." And the psychological game, okay, and started to play that. There is no way. I'm protected by Christ. I'm protected by the power that comes through purity. I had done nothing sinful. There was nothing there that there was a way to get in. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to try to mess with my head, and try to make and to give off a false doctrine. You know, if I were to be able to walk away from that and go, "Oh, did you know the demons can get into you even though that you're a Christian?" Well, now I'm spewing something that's not true, but that's exactly what they're after. And so I said, "Yeah," and then came the most beautiful. Did not realize that they gave me strength, and because they told me they knew where I had been earlier that day. And later, there was quite a thing. That young man over there on the other side of the screen, I had to do some battles about making sure that the enemy couldn't come after him, and tried to go, use him as a weak spot on me, that they would destroy him. And one of the things that was said was, "I know where you were this morning." Well, remember, I'd been at the radio station, and I took him with me.
Right.
So that's another thing that came out of it. And so they wanted to let me know that they know my going out, they know my coming in, they know where my family is. It's that terroristic threat.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
If a foreign operative said that to you, it would terrify you too, right? Like
it's exactly that's where I wanted to put it. So you understood. And then the last thing is said to me, I know you rededicated this property and you gave it back to God. To which I said to them, nobody knew that my wife and I did this. When I first got there and we first started learning about the demonic, we wanted to get the church back into God's hands and get it out. And so we did what we knew to do. And so we walked the property as what is told in the Old Testament, because God said to Joshua, "Everywhere where the sole of your foot has tread, that have I already given to you." And so we walked the property and we asked God to reclaim it, because it was given to him in the first place, that this place was his. Then we went through the church and we anointed all the doors and all the windows with oil. Now, I can't tell you, rituals do not do things for you, but the spirit of the rituals, there's something to it, or God would never have people do those things.
Right. Like the intent and the meaning behind it, right?
Correct, is what is really there, because you can take anybody and go around and do the rituals. Oh, so it's is it like an incantation? Are you casting spells? I mean, what are you doing? No, that's not the point. And so we redid that. And so we were there that night, and the demon said, "I know that you rededicated this property to Christ." Well, nobody was with us. Even my kids didn't know I did that. Right. We put them down to bed, and my wife and I did it while they were asleep. and we did it when nobody was watching. But the
How do
demons
they know
were,
these things?
because the demons were there. They had a right to be there because there were things that happened inside that church that allowed them to be there, very, very sinful things. For example, there was a man, there were people at that church that their dad literally prostituted him. Remember I said sacrifices?
Yes.
Okay. So he prostituted his daughters. He made the altar rails for that church. They were part of that. So I cannot, you can't tell
goodness.
me for 1 second that those altar rails that was inside that church were dedicated to Satan.
Yeah.
Okay. They came from his hand. They were handmade by this man.
Yeah.
Okay. If I could have yanked them out and burned them, I would have.
Sure.
But I did re-anoint them, and God can change things.
You did what you had
if
to
you
do,
put it
yeah.
back
Probably
into
should
His
have.
hands. And there were other things I yanked out and burned, though.
I remember.
So
That's terrible.
anyway, to finish the story, he said, "I know you rededicated this property," and I said, "Okay." I really wanted to know what the demon knew. I said, "If I did that, who was with me?" And the demon said, "Jesus."
Wow.
Not Miriam, not my wife.
Right. Jesus.
Jesus was with me. That gave me more
Yeah.
fire than what you could possibly imagine. That lit me up.
Oh, yeah.
And like, oh, wow. And so then that's when we started praying for her deliverance. And I mean, I thought I had the power behind me. And let me tell you, I did not. And I just started, and I want to, it's a whole different kind of tired. I mean, I have been physically tired. I have been sleep deprived in my life. I have had times where I thought I could feel the energy falling out of the bottom of my feet. This kind of exhaustion, I mean, I was having, I couldn't, all of a sudden, I was struggling with keeping my eyes open. I could have just gone out like a light. And I didn't know what to do, and we weren't getting anywhere. And finally, out of nowhere, there was this huge cottonwood tree. Actually, there were two of them that was in front of the property of the parsonage where we lived. Mm-hmm. And it was, the night was as still as you can imagine. And as we were praying, and I'm just holding on for energy. I have got no more left in me. The top of that tree just shook.
Wow.
I looked at her and I said, "Did you hear that? That's the voice of my Father." And he said, "Get over into that other seat and your husband's driving you home."
Oh, wow.
And he boop, boop, went over into the other seat. I looked at Joe. That was her husband's name. How common can you get? It's Joseph and Mary, right?
Right. Wow. Yeah.
And Joe said, "I'll come back and get my car in the morning." I said, "Okay." He got in the car and he drove her home. It ended just like that.
Man, that would have to be terrifying. I don't know, for Joe, right?
He lived with it. He lived with it. I don't know how the man lived with it.
How long had that been going on that he had to live with that?
20 years, according to him.
Oh my goodness. That's
And-
I just
and-
couldn't even imagine, right?
No.
Like
No. Right.
I would be afraid to sleep. Like I would think that I would wake up to her being on top of me trying to take my life or something.
She tried a couple of times to kill him. Yeah.
That's dedication right there, and love.
Yeah. It is. And when the demons were done with her, and this is very, very common. And I want to go back to that first story, and I want to pull out a major difference between the child and this adult. Okay. And here, but when the demons were done with Mary, and I have seen this happen with a couple of adults that were very much involved with being possessed. And there's the word, possessed. when they were done with her, she was a pitiful, pitiful piece of humanity.
Used up.
They messed her up when they left her, and it wasn't long after they left her, within 2 or 3 months, and she had passed away. She had no desire to live, depression, all different kinds of stuff entered in.
Can you
The young
Take her own
boy-
life?
Sorry.
Or she,
Go ahead.
did she take her own life?
No,
Okay.
she withered up like a plant that had been
Used.
pulled up, and
Used up.
she just withered up and died. But she was using the demons for power.
Okay.
The boy was not possessed. That would be called oppression.
Okay.
The enemy is able to ride on him out here,
Right.
okay, and have control, because he was dedicated. But there comes a point in time where he's got to want it,
Okay.
and he hadn't reached that age yet.
Okay.
But there were things that he knew. When he called out my name, he knew I was there. The enemy is able to connect emotionally with teenagers and that kind of thing. And so premonition and things like that, they can whisper to them, and they want to, the demons want to, because that's how, if I give in to this, I can get power. If I go ahead and do that, I can get power, and they realize, and so they're being groomed for the possession.
Right. This is
Okay.
stages, right? There,
Correct. Yeah.
Can you tell me what those stages are?
Well, it's a simple one into the other, but it's
Okay.
oppression into possession.
Oh, okay.
So it's just that into that. But as they start speaking to people and start getting the premonitions, and they start understanding that there's an entity, and that entity can end up giving them power. Sometimes some of them just know because it speaks to their mind, or as we say, impressions. Others, the enemy literally will appear to them and make them offers. You hear about people dealing with the devil?
Right.
It's literal.
That's a
people
Ross
make
thing.
deals with the devil.
Crossroads demons. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and I can get you this. And the thing of it is the deception is, I can get you power. I can do things like that for you. What the people don't understand is how owned that they are.
Okay.
And you think there's a great book Frank Peretti wrote. It's in a novel form,
This
but it
Present
is a
Darkness?
great description of this whole thing. It's called
you want either the oath or this present
The
darkness.
Oath. That's the one. It's The Oath. And these townspeople want, they make a deal with the devil, and they want this dragon that will literally protect them, and they get their town. Well, they can't control the dragon anymore. The dragon owns them by the time that you come around to it. And that's just it. You can't own it. It will own you. But there's that deception going on that you can. Ask any alcoholic. They're playing around with it. I can control it. And it's not just alcohol, drugs,
Sure. Pornography.
any destructive thing that's going on in their life. Yeah, I got this under control. Oh yeah. It doesn't take very long, and it's got you by the tail, and you know it. But you keep up the lie.
That
You
can
keep
control.
it up. And why do we do that?
Because the truth is scarier than the fiction you're telling yourself.
Absolutely. That is humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That is the knowledge of good and evil.
Can you flesh out the oppression into possession track just a little bit more? Because I think that there's a lot of, especially in the Protestant side of the Christian community, that'll kind of, there's a demon behind every tree, and they would kind of have you believe that you could like trip and fall and accidentally get possessed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
but
that's not.
it's much more, the way that you're describing it is it's much more of a like you have to accept it or even invite it before, like, give yourself over. Can you do that? And then I have can you flesh that out a little bit? And then I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah, I'll try to make it as fast as I can. Then the big deal is, let's talk about this thing called sin for just a minute.
Okay.
Because that's where people's eyes go crossed and so forth. People have sin in their life, and they want to try to manage it, and there doesn't need to be a demon to destroy you. Sin will destroy you. It's a disease. That's what the Bible calls it. It came in during the fall of man. The most common sin that there is not believing God's word. That goes right back to the words that Satan said to Eve. Did God really say, fill in the blank? And so if there can be this doubt that God didn't mean what he said and God's word doesn't have the value that it does, then we are free agents to go ahead and do whatever it is that we want to do, having the knowledge of good and evil. And so we end up choosing. You see how important that this becomes? And here's the thing. Those two things that I just told you are nothing new underneath the sun. Still things that man is wrestling with to this very day. And that was the beginning of where it started. So Satan doesn't use anything new, and man has been caught up on the same thing for the last 6,000 years. Oppression. Oppression is the enemy making a bid for you in order to possess you. So he will oppress you. He has the legal right to do it when you openly practice sin, or secretly practice sin, but knowingly practice sin. Let me say it that way. He has the right to do that because you are making a choice to go against God, to rebel against God and his known law that he has. And when that kind of thing happens to you, he is able to bear down on you, use that sin in order to affect your mind, especially grotesquely things that are grotesquely opposite of God. That is one of the reasons why you see the mind closed to transgenders. That's one of the reasons why you see the mind closed to homosexuals. That's one of the reasons why you see the mind closed to different types of drugs or whatever. However, I can abuse this body, but I want what I want so bad that my mind is set. If you really want to know what's at the heart of TDS, and I don't mean to get political here, but this is a spiritual battle. Because TDS makes no sense. Can you not see what is right in front of you? And the answer is no. Why? Back to Corinthians, because the God of this world has blinded their mind. Not just blind their, notice he didn't say blind their eyes. He said blind their mind. And you're like, really, you can't see that? You can't see that? And so this is a spiritual thing that is going on. And so when we take a look at what is happening in our world now, we go, well, there's not a demon behind every bush. There doesn't have to be. They can walk. We so do not believe in how they work that they can walk right out into the open and do whatever it is that they're doing. This is what TDS is. They're doing what they're doing, and we're calling it tons of other things, but I haven't heard anybody talk about how demonic it is.
But
Right out in the open.
You're not using TDS as in to say that like all liberals, but you're using it as an example. Am I understanding that correctly? To say like people that are so like blinded and have just refuse to see logic and reason when it's laid out in front of them, because like you're using that as, is that your example that I'm understanding?
It's not just an example. I mean it literally. Okay. If you cannot see the truth that is in front of you, the God of this world has blinded your mind. I can prove it to you scientifically. Oh, look, if it quacks like a duck.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, do I need to go any further?
No,
Okay,
you're good.
it's that obvious, and you go, I don't understand. How is it that you can't see? It's because it's a spiritual thing that's going on here, but it's oppression. You're not possessed, but the God of this world is able to bear down on you for those kinds of things. Now, the whole point is to get his manipulation of you to get you to do either sociologically in a large group or in a small group. He wants to be able to use you. Now, sin in us is like being a marionette doll. To whatever that string is connected, the enemy has the ability to pull that string. Whoop,
Can I ask
whoop,
a stupid
there goes my
question?
hand. Why do I keep doing that? I don't mean to do that. Whoop, there goes my hand again. That's because you've given somebody else the string. Jesus Christ, the Bible tells us, came to set the captive free. He's got the scissors that cuts the strings. Now you're free. Now you're Pinocchio. You're free to do whatever. What are you going to do?
There's one of the movies actually that I showed Chris one time. He visited. The movie's called The King, and he's basically talking to a young knight who is upset with behavior, the king's behavior, essentially in his position on a few things. And he makes this analogy about the sense of rebellion and the disrespect he's received. And he said that chickens cannot fly, but I saw one once eke enough wing flap to make it over the fence, and then he was free. But so too are the foxes, is what he said. And I remember that. I think you can use that analogy in a lot of different things, but it's basically what you're talking about. You're free, but so is everything else. And it's the choices you have to make, and you have to realize and live with those choices if you're going to do that, right?
Right. The Apostle Paul talks about in the book of Romans about being free. And what is free? I guess really the term, if you're really into wordsmithing, is liberty.
Yeah.
And the difference between liberty and freedom. And so, the boat pulls into port and you give the sailors liberty. What are they going to do?
Right. Go have fun.
But they have liberty.
Yeah.
And how are you going to do that? And that's what Jesus Christ came. So even after he gives us liberty, there's still choices to make. Mm-hmm. Are you going to serve the one who set you free? And somebody would say, well, then aren't you right back in bondage?
Not if you choose to do
Can I
it.
ask you a dumb question?
No dumb questions.
Sure. Why
Oh, you
possession
changed.
for some people, okay, and not for
hold on
others?
Hold on a second. Chris said I has changed.
I heard that.
Okay. Finish the statement. I wasn't going to use the rest of it on him.
Well,
There's
that's
only
not what-
two dumb questions.
is a question that you already know the answer to. Is the
Right.
one.
So you're asking me something because you don't know the answer to it. So there's no dumb question.
Fair enough. Yeah. I like that. No, but why possession for some people and not for others?
They wanted it.
They wanted it.
They wanted
It
it.
goes back to choice then.
It goes back to choice. I want what I want so bad. So yes, one of the other people that we dealt with that was demon possessed shared how she became possessed.
Really?
And when the enemy was done with her, it was that she was so despondent. And so you had asked about the one, did she commit suicide? No. But this one, I mean, she gave her soul for the ability to play the piano.
Whoa. How
When
does
she
that even
played the
happen?
piano, it sounded like there were 4 hands on the keys. Never, ever. Liberace did not play the piano like she did.
Brother, I was telling you, crossroad demons are real. Like this stuff.
Like when you say
really
crossroad
happens.
demons, you mean like is this like lore, right? Like a crossroads out in the middle
Yeah,
of
there was a famous country, early blues guitarist, that it was said of him that he went out to the crossroads, right? A lot of people that heard him play, I'm telling the story and I'll pull up the name to reference here in a second.
Sure.
But it was said of him that people would go to see him play and he was just unremarkable, uncoordinated, couldn't really play that well. And he was playing in dive bars and couldn't make a living at it. But as the legend goes, he went out to the crossroads and met a demon and made a pact, with the devil, and he sold the devil his soul for a certain number of years in order to be the greatest blues guitarist in the world. And people
I've heard this story.
People that said that they saw him play before and after that event said that it was like he was playing things on the guitar and doing things that people didn't even know you could do with the guitar at that time. And the level of like accomplishment that he was able to make and the leaps that he was able to make in talent, they said was like otherworldly, is what people said about him. And he became a very famous blues guitarist. But no, to this story, the reason I say like this stuff really happens is because of some of these experiences and things that I've actually seen.
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe this is a stupid question. Is it that simple? You just ask. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm willing to do for the chance to play the guitar that well or the piano that well. Like, that's kind of scary when you think about it,
I would say that there is a level of grooming that still goes along with it. Same thing about walking with Christ. When a lot of us give our lives to Christ right out of the chute, there's a lot of love and a lot of mistakes, and the Spirit of the living God lives with you. One of the things that tears me up about pastors and churches, they get so caught up into denominationalism and other things that I like. Read the Bible. It's the Word of God. It is the power unto salvation. It is what changes your life. It is the transformative arm of God the Father. The Word of God is through the Holy Spirit, but nonetheless, the two of them go together. And so when you take a look at how the Bible is done, especially the New Testament, Jesus Christ comes, the first 4 books of the Bible are about the gospel and the good news, and it's the dispensation of Jesus Christ. The other, what would that leave? Take out the book of Revelation, because it's something else. So the next 22 books are about God the Holy Spirit and how he lives with the church. Okay? 22 books. 22 books versus the 5. Well, tell me something. How much do you hear people preach about God the Holy Spirit?
Not a lot.
But it's the predominant writing of the New Testament.
Right.
Well, why don't you hear it?
I don't know.
It's the power. Jesus said, I must go away so that one will come. And when he comes, you will do greater things than I will. We don't talk about him. We don't preach about it. But we say that we believe that there is the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Why don't we preach about God the Holy Spirit? Why don't we not talk to people about it is the natural progression? Because Jesus said that he came to save the world, but he needs to go, and he asked his disciples to stay in Jerusalem until the Holy Spirit will come upon you. Why then do we not talk about that and ask people it should be the natural progression of their spiritual walk? I accept Jesus Christ to forgive me of my sins, but I need God the Holy Spirit to live within me so that I am empowered in order not to have power. I am empowered to live a holy life.
Right.
We got all kinds of people that love to talk about that I'm just a sinner saved by grace. Get out of that. Where's God's saints? He talks about his saints. In the book of Revelation, they're going to make war on the saints. The saints are the holy people of God. Oh, no, I'm just a sinner. And so we've got denomination after denomination that get people to live subpar Christian lives because they never teach the bulk of what the Bible talks about. They're stuck in the dispensation of Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ said, I'm even going away so you can have this thing called the Holy Spirit. and we don't talk about it. We don't preach about it. We don't even want to admit it. We want to stay in being sinful. And the enemy, this is a doctrine of demons, because here's Satan going, that works for me.
Right.
See
Yeah.
how
What better
evil
way
is?
to reach people than to become a denomination of Christianity and mislead people, right?
Oh, dude. Did anybody see the white smoke go up today?
I did. Yes.
And in a lot of ways, historically, it's a huge thing, and I'm rooting for it. Hey, man, the next guy's from the United States. Did you guys see that?
I did. I have a goofy conspiracy theory about how all that happened, but it's not rooted in fact. It's meant to be fun. So.
Oh, okay. The point is in with that denominationalism. Look, my friend, I can talk about the Catholic Church all I want, but I'm a pastor in a Wesleyan church. We've got our problems, and I the bulk of our people will not talk and preach about God the Holy Spirit, and it's 22 out of 27 books. And that's what it's about. And we're still living in that dispensation until Jesus Christ returns. We've got people that don't believe that he's going to return. And we've got people that, even though Chris said it's going to get read right there in Revelations, that it's going to get so bad that he's going to make war on the saints and he will win. And God says, persevere until I return. Okay. And yet I've got people that'll go, that's not going to happen. And as I'll say on any given Sunday, don't argue with me. I just read it out of the book. Mm-hmm. And that's what it basically comes down to. Do you believe it? Do you believe the book? One of my favorite memes right now is this black chick with her hands down on her knees, staring out the end of her driveway. And she's like, what chapter of Revelations are we in today?
Solid questions.
I love that meme because that is right where we are. Hey, listen, let me tell you about some end time stuff right now. Okay. You guys ready for this? So, in 1947, Israel became a nation. Most of our theology is based upon guys who had given up on the prophecy that Israel would ever come back to being a country, even though Ezekiel says dead men's bones will rise up and flesh will start coming back onto that. That's what the description of what the nation of Israel was going to be like. But for 2,000 years, Israel was gone. 1947, it came back.
1948.
Well, it started in 47, but yes, it was adopted in 1948.
Yep.
In 1947, there was a group of rabbis that hung out that kind of gave ruling to everything that happened in Israel. They were called the Sanhedrin. Nobody ever believed that the Sanhedrin would come back, but the Sanhedrin started coming back. And when the Sanhedrin came back, that eventually they started calling back all the rest of the people from all around the world. And Jews started returning. Jews started returning to Israel. That was great. Well, then it was like, okay, can they worship up on the Temple Mount? No. Did you know that it is the policy of the Israel itself that withholds its people from going to the Temple Mount in order to worship?
I did not know.
IDF soldiers keep Jews from going up and worshiping on the Temple Mount. Okay, because they made a pact with, and they believe in order to keep peace, they would rather keep people from worshiping up there so that peace would be on the Temple Mount.
Okay.
That's how much that they believe in it. In the late 1970s, early 1980s, though, the Sanhedrin started developing and having this idea that we're going to get our temple back. We're going to get our temple back. We're going to get our temple back. So they started this thing called the Temple Institute. It's in a really cool place where the Western Wall is. It's right, the Western Wall be over here. It's right there if you were to see the plaza for the Western Wall. One of the things that they have done over the past 40, 50 years is they have gone through and have replicated everything to go into the temple. They now have everything. They have everything done. So they're starting to make preparations so that they can worship back up on the temple and to offer sacrifice.
Yeah,
that's really important because
I got it pulled up for you.
Because you see in Daniel, there's going to be a day when a sacrifice is made. And I'll let Chris read that, what's going to happen when that day happens.
Well, okay.
So not only so they have, it's taken them until the 1990s to do everything. I've heard them play the silver trumpets that go along with that. I've heard them, and they suck. Those guys need help in learning how. But I am suspecting that they will get lessons on how to blow the silver trumpets so that people can be called to worship. They have made a portable altar. It will be the altar to go into the temple. They have already made 2 sacrifices on that altar. I watched the sacrifice that dedicated the altar. So they have an altar. A sacrifice. Yes, you can go on YouTube and look it up. It was 6 years ago, I believe, when it actually happened. And so they have already dedicated that temple. They have the table for showbread. They have the ephods and what the priests are supposed to wear. But they can't do anything until they are able to purify the temple. And it requires a red heifer in order to be able to do that. Well, 5 years ago, by a company out of Texas, they were able to get their first red heifer. But the red heifer that has to be sacrificed in order to purify the temple has to be 3 years old, never have been underneath a load, and it has to be, pull anything, and it has to be perfect. Man, you want to see some of the funniest pictures that are out there on the internet is watching these rabbis with a magnifying glass going through the hairs on this red heifer in order to make sure that there is no white hair anywhere. I mean, they're up in its butt. They're down on the ground. I mean, they are all over this thing.
Inspection.
Well, yes, but it's got to follow exactly 100% God's rule. And that was 6 years ago. They now have 5 red heifers. So they have enough in order, once it meets all the requirements, they have enough in order to make the water, in order to purify all the instruments that go into the temple. Well, they have found, and right next to the western wall, they have dug underground, and they have put the school of priests right next to the western wall underneath the ground. So if you see the plaza and the west wall, you got to imagine there's a whole level underground and there's a school under there. A couple of years ago, they allowed Mike Pompeo, he had to put on his yarmulke, there's pictures of it, and they led him through the school so that they could show it off. All that is being run. It's a school of Kohanim, because Kohens were of the Temple tribe. But there's one problem. In order to make that sacrifice and to go into Holy of Holies, there is one man who is required, and only one man who is allowed to actually go into there. Okay. And you know him by position. So do you know who that is?
No.
Only the high priest is allowed to go in. Israel doesn't have a high priest. Until now, 2 weeks ago, it was announced. The Sanhedrin has laid hands on him to anoint him for the job, but that man had to go under rigorous DNA because he had to come from the lineage of the sons of Aaron.
Oh, wow.
And he qualifies.
No way. Well, I mean,
so now they have, and his first name is Baruch. I got to go back and I got to try to find his last name. Anyway, so they now have the priest. They have what it takes to not anoint, but make sacred with through the red heifers, all of that. And it has always been on my mind that they're going, so they're going to build rock, stone, whatever, the next temple. Well, that is getting challenged all of a sudden in my thinking. Next to the I'm trying to think of the name of the mosque, the Dome of the Rock, we know it by, but it's the the name escapes me.
Okay.
I'm not much into the Muslim language.
Yeah.
Right next to it, there is a spot on the plaza where they believe
Al-Aqsa.
Al-Aqsa, right to the.
You're throwing out so much stuff. I'm like 3 behind you in references.
if you're looking from the east, from the Mount of Olives, and you're looking at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, to the left, there is a spot in the stone where many Jews believe that was the Holy of Holies.
Okay.
Was there. I don't, but that doesn't stop these purposes. It just dawned on me, you don't have to build stone on stone in order to replicate all this. You could go back and do what they did before they built the temple, and you had a full tent for worship to go up, and it was called the tabernacle. And you could put the tabernacle up there and put it over top of the Holy of Holies and make it like a tabernacle with all the cloths, with the curtain and everything over it, in order to make sacrifice in there. And the only thing that would be missing is the
Ark of
the
the
box, the Ark of the Covenant. But we're not told that we'll get the Ark of the Covenant during that time. And I was listening to this guy set it up, and he said, all we need to do sacrifice on the mount, we have everything. It would just take us 2 weeks.
Wow.
2 weeks.
What happens after that when they do that?
Well, Chris has that story. It's in Daniel.
Take it away, Chris.
I heard what I'm beginning in verse 8. I heard what he said, but I did not understand what he meant. So I asked, how will all this finally end, my Lord? So this is the continuation of the same story that we were reading earlier from the messenger angel that was talking to Daniel. This is just 2 chapters later.
Okay.
But he said, go now, Daniel, for what I have said is kept secret and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, cleansed, and refined by these trials, but the wicked will continue in their wickedness, and none of them will understand. Only those who are wise will know what it means. From the time the daily sacrifice is stopped and the sacrilegious object that causes desecration is set up to be worshipped, there will be 1,290 days. And
By the
blessed...
way, let me interject, that's 42 months. Did you hear that number anywhere else?
Yes.
Same number.
And blessed are those who wait and remain until the end of the 1,335 days. So as for you, go your way until the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days you will rise again to receive the inheritance set aside for you.
It's literally the end of... yeah.
Yes. So what happens is sacrifices will start. Where he picked up at is something will cause them to be stopped.
What is that something?
It's called the desolation of, what's the term? The altar is going to be desecrated that the sacrifices were made on.
The sacrilegious object that causes desecration is set up to be worshipped.
Okay, so a false idol.
But it will stop the sacrifices.
Whoa.
And right now, how close are we to sacrifices? If they get the Temple Mount, now last Passover, 100 or so people got past the IDF in order to pray on the Temple Mount for the first time. And they were escorted off by the IDF soldiers. This year at Passover, almost 300 people made it to the Temple Mount to worship on it. And the IDF kind of just turned their backs.
Yeah.
And let them do it.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting closer and closer to Israel being allowed to worship on the Temple Mount. If Trump is able to put his foot on the neck of the Muslims, Israel will get that privilege.
Mm.
And all it will take for them to start sacrifices, they've got everything, is 2 weeks.
I got this
Did
one
you-
for you too. This comes out of Joel chapter 2, into the chapter, beginning of verse 30. It says, "And I will show wonders in the heavens and on earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. And it shall come to pass that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be those who escape, as the Lord has said, and among the survivors shall be those whom the Lord calls." And the reason I'm bringing this verse up is because, Brandon, you sent me, I can't remember if it was earlier today or yesterday, a story where Russia and China are actively in a deal right now to put a
Oh, for the
nuclear power plant
Yeah, it was this
on the
morning.
moon.
Yeah, they want to dig the helium-3 out of the moon's regolith. Yeah,
And so it immediately brought this verse to my mind about the end times, because if the moon, it says that the moon will turn to blood and fall from the sky if it turns red, what would a nuclear explosion on the moon look like from Earth?
well, it wouldn't look like anything because of the space is a void. But
now,
you
wait
know
a
what
minute.
two colors China and Russia are, though?
Yeah.
Red.
You got that. You also have the idea of when that explosion happens, even though it's void of many things, what color will be given off, because when the sun hits that color, that's what will be
Yeah.
reflected to us.
Sure.
So I
Well,
think
it's
that's kind of what Chris was getting at.
It's more or
If
less, yeah.
something like that
what-
happens,
Just what it appears like from
what will it
looking up
appear
at
like to us on Earth?
Yeah.
And you have that. So, to those who may be listening, I know we're getting into a lot of stuff that's speculation. For
conversation.
other people, it's not speculation for me. Right now, I'm using this as my timepiece to go. I'm marking the times. I'm marking the times. We don't know when Jesus is going to come back. He's told us that very explicitly, and only the Father knows. That's absolutely fine. But we're also told to pay attention to the signs, because they will tell us something. They will tell us what's coming. Have we talked? I mean, you want to go geopolitical? Let's talk about all the Druze that have lost their heads, and none of the rest of the world's talking about it.
Oh yeah. We had a small
You'll find that
conversation
in
about it,
Revelations chapter 5. There'll be all those that are underneath the altar that have been martyred, it says, and they'll cry out, "Oh, how long, O God? How long until you avenge us?" Well, it's got to be something to be avenged for. Well, this stuff that's going on right now by the Muslims and the beheadings over the past 20 years, and this one that just ended up, this is the kind of stuff that God's people should be avenged for. And he says, wait just a little longer. Just a little longer. Hang in there. You will be avenged. And so here we go. How close are we? Well, I always thought, time's not going to, the pendulum for time isn't going to start swinging until they put the shovel in the ground and get ready to build the next temple. Wait a minute. We don't really need to build the next temple.
Yeah.
They could set up a tabernacle on the Temple Mount, because when that guy did that video presentation, and he said, all we need is 2 weeks. That it just blew me away. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't looking for it either.
I showed Chris maybe like a week ago, but there's a guy, he's Middle Eastern, and he's calling himself the Mahdi. And this is like is a term in Islam, and I am not versed in all of this, the Islam nonsense, I guess, with this, but he is saying that he is the descendant of Jesus and Peter. He's the next, the true prophet, all of this, like, he's a false prophet, obviously, but he issued all of these followers. He has these certificates of citizenship to, it's called the free just state, something like that, right? Like it's a new nation, this hullabaloo he's come up with. But I mean, when you listen to the speech that he gave, I mean, it is completely and totally blasphemous. And
Don't stand too close.
yeah, No, but he has his own church. In fact, I saw today, like it even made the news. Like a couple of these people held up a poster of him out, and the new true pope has already been selected, and it was like this big sign they had. Two people were holding it up, and it was a picture of him, like they were waiting for this to happen and make a statement. But yeah, go ahead, Chris.
His name is Abdullah Hashem.
Yep.
And he makes some pretty wild claims. I watched an excellent breakdown from an apologist that my wife likes to follow, and basically went through his claims one by one. This guy's actually been around for quite a few years now, and it's just really interesting that he's going viral right now. But he does claim to be the true and legitimate pope. He claims to be a descendant of he claims to be a messenger
Simon
of Jesus. He claims to be a descendant of quite a few people. He also claims to be a descendant of Muhammad, I believe, in here. And so he's trying to unite Christians and Muslims, saying that he is the cross section between the two. And really, he also put out a book several years ago. I'll get the title for it here in a little bit so I can update the reference. But in his book, he makes some wild claims. It all reeks of Gnosticism, where this guy claims to have the secret knowledge because of his lineage that he has access to, and it's all very classic cult leader stuff. But one of the absolute worst claims that he makes in this book is that when Jesus, he specifically references the scene where Jesus comes into a house, and then the lady comes in and she washes his feet and anoints his feet with oil and dries it with her hair. And in the book, he claims that when Jesus says his feet, what he's actually referencing is his Johnson.
Genitals?
And when she is cleansing his feet, he just makes this leap. It's the wildest thing I've ever seen. He just makes this leap. And he says, so basically when she was bent over cleaning his feet in front of the disciples, and then when Jesus talks about the living water, and if you drink this water, you will never thirst again, he tells the woman at the well, he's talking about his semen, because it's the water that gives life. And then he goes so far as to say that that Jesus is basically receiving fellatio in front of his disciples.
Well, that's just his vehicle to get you to let your wife sleep with him, basically.
That's 100. That's 100%. And then he goes so far as to say that when Jesus is in the upper room for the final supper, that again, because he gets down and washes his disciples' feet, and he makes the same wild claim that because they say feet, what he really means is that Jesus went around and performed fellatio on the 12 disciples and said, "In this way that I've done this for you."
Do realize that feet in Hebrew translates
is the word
into
for feet.
Feet.
I know, but this is what these claims that this guy is making.
So that's
it's
intentionally
completely
evil,
and totally
in my
heretical.
Yeah, that's evil. Back to the battle of the mind is probably the greatest evil. You can see the evil out in front when the Muslims behead the Christians. That's evil, but it's apparent. You can see that. The evil that is playing for the mind, and that is testing men's minds and women's and children, what is played in there is it is so evil because they will take things that look innocent, but there's just sheer evil behind it, because the idea is to get you to accept it.
Right.
The evilness of evil. It's wicked. It really is wicked.
This guy's book was titled "The Goal of the Wise" by Abdullah Hashem.
Got to be wise,
Yeah. Got to be wise.
To sort of take it back, I do want to ask you about the Antichrist, but I want to take it back real quick to demons. The same way that angels have roles, the gifts that God has given them and why they were created. I mean, is it any possession when that happens? Is it like a specific rank of demon that's doing this, or is it just any? I mean, I don't.
Well, what we're told in God's word. It could be any of the ranks. We learned that from the one called Legion because literally he had thousands of what was it, thousands, 8,000 demons that man was carrying within himself. I can't possibly imagine, but I do know this, that when they were cast out and they said, Lord, let us go into the pigs over there. Do you realize animals can be then possessed?
Yes.
Okay. So it's something, I've met a few cats.
No, really?
I'm actually not kidding.
I don't think
I've
you're
met
kidding.
a few cats. I was
wanna hear
like,
about
what
this.
is wrong? This cat is possessed. Okay. Seriously. They can be possessed, but the pigs would not live with that in them. They would rather have destroyed themselves, which they did, than to live with demons in them. And this man had all of them in him. Think about that.
Right. What's the point of possessing an animal like that? You said you saw or came across a possessed cat. Like, what behavior led you to believe that? And then what would be the point, I guess, of taking over an
Cat
animal?
could turn just like that. You could be petting the cat and whatever, and the next thing, that thing would lay into me. I mean, teeth marks, the whole works. Puncture my skin and whatever. And I literally, the last time it did it to me, I picked it up. It's holding onto my hand, and I slung it across the room and slammed it into the wall. And my hand's bleeding. It's ripped up. I got 2 puncture marks right here in between the skin of my thumb. That's the only thing. And man, I had to watch the one puncture wound. It looked like it was going to go infected on me. Yeah, so I'm peeling it back and antibacterial and all this other kind of stuff in it. But that cat was constantly like that. 1 minute it would come, pet me, whatever, and the next day, so if you put your hand down there, and then it would just go up your hand. It was wicked, evil, and it's just like I think that thing's possessed. But yeah, Jesus sent them into the pigs, and the pigs would not live with that in them. They would rather die.
So I'm looking at it here. It's in Mark chapter 5, and it doesn't give an indication of how many legion is.
Well, usually some translations will translate it into a number.
I've heard 1,000
but
before.
it is "we are legion, for we are many" is the quote.
Specifically here in the ESV, it says, and he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many."
Yeah. And there's a hierarchy in there. One was speaking for all.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and again, no stupid questions, right? I don't know the answer to this. If you survive this, right? You go through oppression, possession, and come out the other side. Are you still able to be saved?
I'm looking at that in this verse right here.
Go for it.
The herds. So the pigs run into the sea and they drown themselves. Picking up in verse 14, the herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country, and the people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. So he was sitting there and stayed with Jesus while they all departed.
Does it? These
And then-
people.
No,
go
so
ahead,
just
of course.
and they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region, and he was getting into the boat. The man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him, and he did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled.
I've heard before people who have lived through this, that they have some sort of stain on them the rest of their life, that they have to worry about it for the rest of their life. Now they're falling back into being possessed again. Is there any truth to that?
Not to the best of my knowledge, but that doesn't mean that the enemy doesn't plague their mind with fear to try and recapture them. But just as this
so
man had
marked,
the
basically.
confidence of what God had done for him, that's what, and I don't mean to be pointing fingers, but that is what is lacking. If Jesus Christ has truly set you free, and you stand on that rock with 2 feet, there are things that God has done for me, and one of those things that he has called me to be a preacher of the gospel for him. And that's how the calling came. It wasn't to be a pastor or a specific job. It's just, I can remember that night so plainly. Will you preach for me? It was almost an audible voice. It was over this shoulder. And the reason why I say this one is because that's my bad ear. That's the one I hear God best in. Mm-hmm. And will you preach for me? And that's necessary, and I need to be convinced because of the times that God is going to come, or the enemy is going to come and say, did God really say? Are you sure you heard him right? Did he mean something else? And, the enemy does that to play. We're back to mind games. And the times that I've had to just stand on that, I am for sure, I know that, and that becomes my faith, that's what God has called me to. And if God called me to it, he will see me through other things. Mm-hmm. I just need to remember to stand on what God has asked me to do, not other things, not get off. I'll tell you another story that dealing with demons. So that particular town that I was living in, by the way, Port Clinton, Ohio, I found out after being there for 3 or 4 years that there was a strip club in town.
Okay.
I had no idea. I was there for that long, and I had no idea where. So
well, that's good.
Yeah.
I thought it was a nice establishment.
Right. Yeah.
It tells you where I wasn't, right?
I only ever got. Yeah.
So,
exactly.
So anyway, there was a gal
They have
that
really good wings, though.
Literally was just thinking they had great. I only ever DoorDash the chicken wings. I didn't know.
Is that really?
Yeah.
So, I just read it for the articles too. I got you.
Right.
Okay, so, there was a girl that we were trying to minister to at the time, and she had a beautiful little boy. His name was Josiah. It's hard to forget that. Good King Josiah. Mm. And my wife and I were watching him from time to time so that she could work. Well, then we found out that she was working the strip clubs. Oh, man. I'm like, I'm not going to watch your son and help you be a stripper. Okay. Yeah. So, well, I can't work if it good. If that's keeping you from going to work, here's your son. We're not going to watch him. You go get another job. Well, I'll help you out. But
right.
No.
Some
Yeah,
people
go work at Target. We'll do this. Yeah.
Some people would call you cruel.
Yeah, they would, wouldn't they? So she's the one said, well, it's Definitely. That building at the end of the town. And so for 3 weeks, I was taking somebody home after church, and then I would go and I would drive around that building and I would pray against it.
Wow.
Pray against it for 3 weeks. Then one Sunday came after 3 weeks, and literally nobody showed up for church.
That's weird.
I had like 3 or 4 people. Now, it wasn't a big church, and I only ran 25 to 35 people.
Okay.
But I mean, only 3 or 4 people showed up
that's
for
really
church.
strange.
That's really strange, right? I even had one lady that for a 2-week period, heading into each weekend, she was having heart attack symptoms, went to the hospital. They kept her overnight. She was not having heart attacks. She was not having acid reflux. There was nothing that they could pick up. She didn't have any stones, gallbladder stones, anything else like that, but she was having severe chest pain.
Yeah.
To the point that it's like, give me something for the pain. I can't stand it. They had no idea. They were phantom pains. They had no idea what was causing them. And she was released after Sunday both times. Okay. So that happened for 3 weeks in a row. Okay. See, 3 weeks I drove around the church. And after the third one, I'm just like, man, what is going on? This is just weird what's going on in people's lives that's keeping them out of the house of God. Mm-hmm. And my wife asked, so have you been doing anything differently? And I said, no, not anything differently. I said, I found out where the strip club was, and I had been, driving around and praying against it. And she's like, you dummy. Like, what? did God call you to do that? I'm like, no, I'm just exercising my authority. Really? You're exercising your authority, but God never called you to do that? And what I had done, since it wasn't what I should have been doing, I was giving the enemy legal right. Now, he couldn't, I didn't do anything sinful, so he didn't do anything to me, but he was able, through phenomenon, to keep everybody else away from the church. He had legal right to do that because of the stuff that was going on in their lives.
So you hit him and he hit you back.
I walked up on the porch and I kicked the dog. Yeah, that's what my wife told me. You went up on the porch and you kicked the dog. Way to go.
Right.
Can you made the statement several times now. You talk about spiritual right, have the right to do. Can you flesh that out for people and help them understand spiritual right of way and like the legality of the principalities?
Okay. Have you guys seen Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe?
Of course.
Okay. Aslan makes a statement. Well, the witch makes a statement and says, no, it's Aslan. It's after the tablet has broken. He comes back to life, and he's talking to Lucy and Susan. Lucy and Susan, the two girls, remember? They spend time with him as they walk him back. And Lucy says, but I saw you die. And Aslan says, there is an old magic that is before time. And the word, if you read the book, M-A-G-I-C-K is how it is spelled. And there's a reason why it's spelled that way, is because it doesn't refer to the type of magic that we're talking about, but rather it's a mystery of the unknown.
Yeah, Lewis was good.
And C.S. Lewis is quite the wordsmith, and which means that there is a law that belongs to God. God is an orderly God, a God of laws. What Aslan is getting at there is an old law, there is an old mystery that if one lays down his life for someone, he will pick it up again. It's a law of God's. And so that's what's going on there. He also refers to it in another place where the witch says, I know the law. And Aslan roars at her and says, don't quote the law to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
I said that to you the first time we talked, and you were like, oh, man, great reference. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't, but I'm sure you used it. If I said that, that is a great reference, because I'm absolutely angry at people who compare apples to oranges and that cannot make good references, and they compare the wrong thing to the wrong thing. But anyway, that law is there, and just like the witch, and this is what C.S. Lewis is trying to get at, she had legal rights to do what she did because there is a law. And a lot of times the enemy of our soul, Satan, has the right to do what he can do because there is a law concerning when man is sinful. Where there is sin, he has rights. And he is just exercising his rights over people when they sin. Remember, I told you about being a marionette, and they can do that. Well, sin gives him the right in order to control and to oppress in areas. If you want to be free, you need to be free from the sins that you are practicing. Stop them, repent of them, and be set free from them, and the enemy will stop oppressing you. That is part of resisting the devil. You resist the devil, he will flee from you. You want to resist him? Stop practicing the sin. That is resisting what he's doing. Don't give in to temptation. You're yielding into that. You're not resisting. He has the right once you go that way.
This sounds, are you familiar with the comic and then the movie Constantine by any means?
No. No.
Okay. So the movie has Keanu Reeves in it, but there is in the movie and in the comic, there's a bar that both angels on earth and demons on earth go to, and it's meant to be neutral. Okay. And the neutral ground, right? Yeah. So bear with me. But
Okay.
the guy who like owns or runs the bar, his job is to maintain the balance between both of these groups that are there. Okay. And one of the points he's making to Constantine, John Constantine is his name, the main character, is that there are rights, that there are the agreements, the old rights, the old rules, these things that they have permission to be here just as much as you have permission to be here, and just as much as the angels have permission. He's talking about the demons, that they have permission to be here. And that while he's in the bar, he is not allowed to banish demons back to hell. That's his whole thing. Okay. He banishes demons back to hell. And so it's funny because I've never heard that reference before, like what you were talking about, like the right to do things outside of that movie where they were talking about. So I didn't know. I thought it was somebody's creative license, right? And I didn't realize that this had like roots in biblical or theology, right, about the right to do things. It sounds like there's just so much more, I guess, my simpleton way of thinking about this, there's just so much more behind the curtain that we have no idea that goes on, that you mentioned Frank Peretti's book earlier. My mom made me read This Present Darkness, and then there's the sequel to This Present Darkness. I don't remember the name of the sequel to that, but those are
This Present Darkness, and actually the
Darkness.
first one is Piercing the Darkness. Oh, wait a minute, that's the second one. Piercing the Darkness and This Present Darkness. So the two books.
Yeah. She made me read both of those when I was in middle and high school. But I even remember in the books, there's like actual battles. Like the one of the archangels, I don't remember if it was Michael or whatever, in a certain scene, draws a sword and then smashes it into one of the demons, right? And
Well,
I
he
can't remember.
specifically stays
remember better.
away from the named angels.
Okay.
In those books, he
Yeah.
does.
He makes
but-
up names of angels. He stays
Okay.
away from the biblical angels.
Makes
So
sense.
as not to slander, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes okay. So, but I mean, is that really what happens behind? Like, is this like his creative license, or when there's soldiers and I'm a captain? The language, right? These are military terminology,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, is this actual physical battle, right?
So I picked up Piercing the Darkness, and I read it, and right out of the chute, I was massively critical.
Okay.
So then I started, if this thing's going to be right, it's got to line up to the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then I started taking biblical references. Frank Peretti is in bounds. Yes, he took liberties and license, but with all the places that he did it, he is in bounds and within the knowledge of Scripture
Okay.
to be able to do what he did. And it's one of the things that actually won me over to reading other books of Frank Peretti, because initially I was just like, oh, no, you're kidding me. No,
Right.
that's not right. That's not right. So then it's like my wife challenged me. She's like, tell me where it's wrong biblically. All right. Give me a
I
Bible.
will.
I will.
That's how
I
C.S. Lewis
couldn't.
came to Christ. Tell me
I
where it's wrong.
couldn't. Exactly. I couldn't. He used, because there's things there that we don't know, but what he did with them were all the things that we do know. And so he was in bounds with his liberties in writing about it. And I was like, wow. Okay. So then it started opening up my brain. And then if you, I don't know if you've ever done black, red, or white.
You're talking about Ted Decker.
Ted Decker's the same way. Now I had already been through Peretti and about 4 or 5 of his books, and somebody said, "Oh man, you want something?" And I approached it all the same way. I got into black, and it's like, okay, scripture, Scripture. And he was in bounds. He didn't step out of bounds. And I'm like, okay, all right.
I wish
And
some of the. I wish Angel
it's mind-blowing.
TV. I wish Angel TV would pick up some of those great books because, man, could you imagine piercing
Like a
the
series?
darkness? Yeah, as like
Or a
just
movie?
a
Yeah.
solid HBO series if
Well,
they
didn't they
really
do-
did it justice.
Didn't he do House? Wasn't House picked up
They
as a?
did, and it was absolutely crappy. But
Oh, was it? I
yeah.
never saw it. I thought
And that was
they were going to pick
that
that
was
one
a
up.
that was a crossover
It's
book. That was
disappointing when they take a book
Peretti
and
and
ruin
Decker.
it by making it a movie.
Yeah, but I do have two verses. This has been like a really interesting experience for me because it's been a long time since I've stretched my apologistic muscles. But to circle back around on the spiritual right and to put some scripture behind it, this is a verse a series of verses out of John chapter 8, and this is Jesus talking to the religious leaders of the day. And they answered him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did, but now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You are doing the works your father did. They said to him, we were not born of sexual immorality. We have one father, even God. Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I came from God and I am here. I am not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning who does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. So that's Jesus talking to the religious leaders. And then jumping over to Paul. This is in Romans chapter 1 at the end of the chapter, starting in verse 28. It says, and since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetous, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil. Just doing what somebody else did wasn't enough. They had to invent their own. Disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who, Paul's like that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them.
Yeah. And then the other place, the first book that was ever written is the book of Job. And the whole purpose,
that great story.
the whole purpose behind the book of Job, because if you go through, the book almost seems like, well, what's the purpose? You know, God took him through all this and just to restore him. I mean, the guy had to endure. Is that the purpose of the book? No. Once you realize that it's the first book written, the idea of the book is that it is put down into print so the rest of us can understand who God is and how the heavenlies work. And that's the whole point. Job 1 and 2, chapter 1 and 2. So you get this picture that there is a day when all the sons of God, angels, demons, they're called the sons of God, have to make an appointment in front of God. So now you realize they are called in front of God and are judged. So that happens. Wow, we don't talk about that very much now, do we? And so they are. And so Satan himself, the lead, he stands in front of God, and God just outright offers him Job. Have you considered my servant? Where have you been, first off? Which is a hilarious question. It's like, okay, God, you know where I've been, right? Yeah, I know, but humor me. Tell me. I want to see if you're going to lie to my face.
Yeah.
You ever thought about that? Satan is a liar and a father of liars. Do you know who he can't lie to?
God.
Can't lie to God the Father. Mm-hmm. He already knows. Man does the same thing. Man, we have a tendency, we can't be honest with ourselves. And if you can't be honest with yourself, how do you be honest with God who you can't see?
Right.
All right. And so, you know, we think that we're going to get by with stuff and that we're going to lie about it. I wish we would be so much further up the road spiritually, every one of us, if we would just realize you can't You can't lie to God. He already knows. So why are you trying? And then why do you lie to yourself? So anyway, but Satan's there, walking in and out of the earth to and fro, looking to see who I can devour, that kind of stuff. And he's like, well, have you considered my servant Job? Yeah, I have. But you have put a hedge of protection around about him. And so you need to get this picture that even though God has said, you can't touch my servant Job, Satan already knows he can't because he has tested the fence. Mm-hmm. Even though God has said, don't, he is so rebellious, he has already tested the fence. So he's tried to put his hand through it. He's tried to go over it. He's tried to dig under it, all this other kind of stuff. You put a hedge of protection around him. He says, you know what? You can do anything to him, but you can't, you can have anything around about him.
Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your hand.
He's yours.
Only against him do not stretch out your hand. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord.
And he couldn't touch him the first time. And literally within a 15-minute period, the man lost everything.
Yeah.
He lost everything that made him wealthy. He lost the servants that went along with that, and he lost his children. Now, it would probably been a good thing if he would have lost his wife, but no. Satan had a plan for her.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be one of the biggest things that actually wounds him. Mm-hmm. Now, how did Satan know that about his wife?
What did he know?
He already knew that. He knew her character.
So this is in chapter 2. You just want me to read it?
Yep, go for it.
Since we're into the story.
Again, let me preface it really quick.
Sure.
And so the second time, God snaps his fingers, Satan stand before him, exact same scenario. Well, hey, how about my servant Job? He didn't do what you said he was going to do. The idea is we need to pay attention to how things operate in the heavenlies. This is how Satan literally operates, okay? And he can't do anything to us that God doesn't allow him to do. That is even oppression, and that is even possession. Mm-hmm. Okay? But if you're going to turn your back on God, and if you're going to sin, remember, sin is legal right for the enemy to work. But Job was perfect. He didn't have that. But his wife did.
Weird.
So did his children, but now they're gone. But he left his wife.
As a door.
Think about that for a second. Okay? And he's going to use her against him. And then, so he has all this stuff going on. And in the process of all that, what we're seeing is what God allows. But where sin crops up, it's not about God allowing. Satan has a legal right to use it. But only because Satan, when it comes to Job, he doesn't have these sinful strings, but God allows it to happen because God knows what he's going to do, which is one of the things that we got to make sure that we don't do, and that is confuse God's power with God's knowledge. Those are two different things. God knew that Job was not going to sin against him, but did his power stop it? And the answer is no.
Spoken like a true Arminian.
Thank you. But I didn't write the book.
I know. And
Go ahead.
And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? This is time number 2. That there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil. He still holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without reason. Sorry, that was Satan speaking.
Yep.
Right there. He still holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him with no reason. Then Satan answered the Lord.
Theology right there. It really is.
Then Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. All that a man has, he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand. Only spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with loathsome sores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, and he took a piece of broken pottery with which to scrape himself as he sat in the ashes.
Now stop right there. You're a medic. You got boils from the crown of your head to the sole of your feet. How much infection is in your body?
Hey, this man is in pain.
Should he have lived?
Even breathing.
No medication, no antibiotics. Should he have lived?
No,
he shouldn't. Even with God saying to Satan, you can't touch you can't take his life. Mm-hmm. What did Satan try to do? Tried to take his life. Who sustained him then? Because he should have died. God did. Okay? So even though he tried to do the evil and go over top of God, who is still in control?
Right.
God.
That's the thing that you got to know. Okay, keep going.
Well, I'll read this last thing and then I have a thought. Verse 9. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God and shall also not receive evil?" In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. I thought it was very interesting as you were saying that, because we're talking about spiritual right. God didn't make a deal with the devil in all of this. There was no deal that God made. He said, go forth and do this. I'll allow you to do this thing. It wasn't like, hey, if you do this, I'll do this. There was no like pact.
Well, there's no if then.
Right. So I just found that to be very interesting as we're talking about this. He is in your hand, only spare his life. But even then, God put, like you were saying, the backstop in place to be like, I know that Satan only disobeys. It's like we said earlier, it's his character. He only speaks in lies because it is of his character to lie. It is in his character to disobey. So God knows all these things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's like the Chinese. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that?
What?
Anyway.
Chinese.
Agree there.
I mean, okay, so you want to talk about our religion. Let me just slip this in really quick. The Muslims, it is written in their Quran that there is honor in deceiving the infidel. Mm-hmm. That's how it's written. There is honor in deceiving the infidel. Tell me we serve the same God.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
No, not at all. Not at all. So, how evil is evil? You know what? God said that I could do anything. You know what? I'm still going to do what I'm going to do. Oh, drat it. How is it that he stops me? You know?
Confounded, foiled again.
Right.
Yeah, I mean.
Pesky kids.
Oh, wait, Reggie. So, it just, there's, the first book written, it's given to us so that we can see what happens behind the heavenlies. And tell me, how then do we get this demonic stuff so messed up that today we have no idea what the doctrine of demons really is? Because we're right back to Adam and Eve. We have the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and we have to make a choice. And he is the greatest created psychologist in this world.
Well, it's almost as if mankind, for the first several thousand years prior to, being able to write our thoughts down and preserve our knowledge for posterity, suffered from a lack of knowledge. There was so much we didn't understand about the world that we didn't have access to. And so there you see one of the sins of the early church in keeping the writings of God away from the people, and preserving and keeping that knowledge. So it's like for the longest of time, mankind had a lack of knowledge. Now, after the printing press, and especially with the advent of the internet, now mankind, it's almost as if the devil was like, okay, if I couldn't keep them in the darkness with not having enough knowledge, so they're ignorant. Now that everything's out there and you can get a hold of it, now we suffer from too much knowledge.
Have you ever,
And
have any of you guys ever
both
met
of those-
somebody that's so smart they're stupid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For all
Yeah,
your
you-
knowledge, you have not wisdom.
mm-hmm.
Totally.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right on it. And something that Brandon said earlier, he was talking about. Oh man, I just had this thought, and it's slipping my mind really quick. You talked too long, but it was something that Brandon had said. Oh man, I wanted to get back to that. If I think of it, I'll come back to that. And I'm sorry.
No, don't be. I actually do have a question for you.
Go ahead.
When Satan fell from heaven and the third of the angels went with him, is that considered sin the same way that when human beings disobey God is considered sin?
Yes.
It's
That's
the
why
same
he was
thing.
kicked out of heaven, which is why you don't want to be saying, I'm a sinner saved by grace because sin got Satan kicked out of heaven. Do you think you're going to be allowed in with sin?
Right. No.
You're where God is. You're in a perfect realm. He wants you to be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, quote, end quote.
Right.
That's that's a real thing. And another doctrine of demons is, oh, you know what? You're going to sin every day in word, thought, and deed. You can't help yourself. So, God impugns, is the word, righteousness to you. No, God cleanses. 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. God cleanses us when we participate in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. It is for a cleansing and for purification of us. Don't get me wrong, I do not preach perfection. Man is not perfect. All three of us sitting right here, I'm not perfect. But making a mistake is not sin. Okay? Where they're like, oh yeah, you did because you're earthly. That's a mistake. It's because of sin. Oh, you're right. It's because of sin. But it's not because I'm sinning. I'm not sinning when I make a mistake. It's because that my flesh is faulty. I forget things. I forget things bad.
Right.
I forget things. I memorize things wrong. I misspeak. Sometimes I cross up things and I didn't even realize I crossed them up. I didn't mean to do it.
Sure.
Sometimes I might mean to actually do it, and I might be teetering on doing something intentionally sinful. But you know what? I can repent and I can ask God to change my heart.
Yeah.
Choosing. Make a choice, man. Make a choice. Joshua, who are you going to serve? Are you going to serve the gods on the other side before we came out of Egypt? What are you going to do? But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. He makes a choice. We don't think that is possible nowadays. And so this is what it basically comes down to. Chris was referring to this. Hosea, can't remember the exact scripture reference, but it is in the book of Hosea. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Yeah. They don't know. Well, ignorance is not bliss. You break the law, you still break the law.
Hosea 4:6.
You're still guilty.
Right.
Just because I didn't know it wasn't law. And this is something that we've seemed to forget in American justice. We got all kinds of people that break the law. Well, I didn't know it was the law. Please have mercy. Don't do anything. Oh, it's okay. We'll let you go.
If you have
you stand before God, how are you going to be judged? You broke the law, but I didn't know. You broke the law.
Well, Brandon, is not knowing the speed limit a justification for speeding?
No.
No.
I've had people say that to me before, though.
I'm sure. I mean, that's a pretty common thing. Do you know how fast you were going?
Yeah. I'll never ask that question. But
yeah, it's a very leading
self-incriminating question. Yeah. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't know.
And I will be honest. It's like I'm going to lie to you. I'm going to be transparent. Then when a cop pulls me over and asks me that question, no, I really don't, which is why I was speeding.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying any attention.
I was intentionally doing 90 in a school zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Well.
No.
Hey, man, I had a motorcycle blow my doors off. I was doing 75. He had to be doing 100 on a bike.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, the wrong size bug hit you in the face, you're done.
Yeah.
He did not have a windshield on that thing either, Chris. You of all people know, even doing 30, you can get knocked off a bike.
Dad, don't. It's another inside story.
Dude, I remember when I was in high school, my dad and we were driving on the Autobahn, and he used to say, "Yeah, let's see how fast I can get it on this straightaway," and he maybe was doing like 180 clicks, pushing it towards 200 clicks, and then we got passed by either like a Lambo or a Ferrari, like we were standing still, and he's like, "Holy shit," I was like, and it was moving so fast that and we were hauling butt, but it was like we were standing still. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And so the Autobahn's good for that.
I had a guy tell me one time he had a Ford Pinto on the Autobahn.
Oh man.
If you don't know what a Ford Pinto is, let's just talk about a car with a rubber band. Okay,
Listen, son. If you can't run with the big dogs, what are you doing?
Don't put lipstick on that pig.
Porch, right? Anyway, he was like, "I just did it because whatever." He goes,
the humor.
"I could get that thing up to 120 on a straightaway," and I'm thinking, "It's the Autobahn. I know there are cars that are pushing 190, 200 on the Autobahn."
Oh yeah.
Well, this is back in he would have been doing it during the late 70s.
Okay.
And he was talking to me about it in the 90s. So, they didn't quite have the cars like they have today.
Sure. There's a reason Polizei drives Mercedes and Audis and things like that, because they can get it up to,
they can get it
180.
up there.
Yeah. Because they got it.
He's like, it was so fun. He says 120.
Right.
I sound like a
The transmission fell out the bottom. Yeah.
He's like, I sound like a mosquito, and all of a sudden this car that doesn't make any noise.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I asked the question about sin and angels because I know that angels and humans are not the same thing, and didn't know if maybe what they did is classified as something different because they still have to make a choice though, like you were talking about. They make a choice every day to remain in heaven and not sin. So they have to choose to remain pure every day or whatever, right? However time passes where they're at. And so I guess it's still a sin. So understanding, that even though we are different than angels, it's still the choice is what makes it a sin, it's not a mistake. Yeah.
That is awesome because that is missed a lot by people. Satan chose to not just be alone in it. He took 1/3 with him. That was a choice.
For all of them.
He was kicked. For the rest of them that followed him, it was a choice. You're right. You're absolutely right. What you want to know the difference between angels and men?
Mm-hmm.
We get to be redeemed.
When they screw up, it's forever.
Yeah. God deemed that so. He did not love them. Let's go back to this word. He did not love them in the same way that he loved you and me. We get a choice. The most powerful thing that God gave man was the ability to choose. We can choose to love him. We can choose to honor him. We can choose him. The angels don't get that choice. The angels, they get one other thing, though. They get to stand in his holy presence, and they don't live in a realm of temptation. There is a very significant thing why we have to choose God from a point of sin. We are already evil. We're born into evil. We're born into sin. And then we have to choose God through our sin and go back. The angels, they're already in a righteous place, and they're not tempted with that. But we have to choose from that. What it is God has his realm of holy people that are already in a holy place. They do not love God the same way that we do, because they didn't have to choose God. It's all that they know. We have to choose God through the evil, because God wanted people who would just choose him because they just love him.
Mm-hmm. So it sets up such a powerful dichotomy, because as you were saying that, I was thinking about the fall of man and how Adam, who would have been a perfect man, and it said that God came down and walked with him daily.
Cool,
and so he stood in the presence of God, and yet Adam chose the unknown, which was the evil. But now, as fallen man, because we're born into the evil and that's all we know, we also have to choose the unknown, which is the righteousness of God, to go back the other direction.
And the very thing that God chooses to win us with is called love. If people can catch sight of it. The very first thing that the enemy will cause people to question goes back to Adam and Eve. Eve questioned that God loved her. Did God really say? Because if he loved her, he would have told her the truth, right? Mm-hmm. Did God really say? And he got Eve to question that. It's the same thing. He attacks everything. I don't know God. And if God really loved me, he'd reveal himself. And that's why there is no God. And guys just have all kinds of excuses. And there really isn't any. There really isn't any. The book of Romans. Is there an excuse, Chris?
None that's going to work.
No, there is no excuse, because you can look up into the heavens, and tonight, man, there was a beautiful 2/3 moon that's going on here, and it is so yellow, and you can see the craters, the stars, and there's a little tear in every Wisconsinite's eye, because when the moon went down, or when the sun went down and the moon came up, it was 52 degrees outside. A little bit of a joke, but no,
it's women weather.
Yeah,
right.
It's gorgeous outside, and all that kind of stuff, and spring is coming, and you can see the handiwork of God. How do things go from brown to green? That is just amazing. How all of a sudden the little violets are popping out in the yard, and my wife's going around, because she does this home gardening medicinal thing, so the preacher's wife is a junkie, and she's growing mushrooms, and stuff like that. But just some beautiful things. We were up at Nepco Lake, and I got to have my granddaughter, which is just an honor, to be able to do, and just love on her. But when we went to a store, I'm an executive director, and there's a gal who's going through a lot of things, and she had her little 4-year-old daughter, and her little 4-year-old daughter, beautiful girl, comes up to me, yanks on my arm, so I bend down on one knee, and I don't know why, but she just gives me a hug. And you see these things, and the Bible says in Romans, you look up into the sky, look down onto the earth, and if you can't find that there's a God, there's no excuse if you just ask. You want to hear a great miraculous story? Here you go. So there's a guy, missionary, and he's going to go to a country in South America. And he feels that he wants God wants him to preach to a tribe of Indians. So there's a crazy airplane pilot, and he gets in the plane with him, and they go flying. And the guy's like, "Bad storm up ahead. I'm going to fly around it." He tries to fly around the storm, And actually, he flies into it. He doesn't know how that happened. He can see, he's got the instruments and so forth to be able to get around the storm, but he still flies into it, blows him off course. And it gets so bad, the wind shears inside of it gets so bad that he tells the guy, the missionary, he's like, I've got to put the plane down. I can't control this or I'm going to crash. And the guy says, where? And out of nowhere, there's a field. He says, right there, I'm going to put it in a field, about 150 yards long. Goes through the field. It's really bumpy because there's stumps in the field. Somebody cut down trees and left the stumps. And he gets in. And as he comes out, they come out of the plane, bad storm, it's raining. But all of a sudden, this tribe of people just come out of the bushes. And they're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
We're going to get eaten.
We're on the menu.
And what appears to be the chief, and he can speak broken English, says, did you come from the great God?
Why, yes, I did.
He said, through my, yes, the great God has sent me here. He said, then come with my people. And he leads him in. That chief, his dad told him to be a great chief. He need to seek the gods and find the greatest of the gods. So with all of his heart, he tried to find who the great or greatest God was. In doing that, he thought he heard someone say to him, if you cut down all those trees in that field, the great God will send you someone to tell him about him. So they did. And they waited.
Wow.
And they heard the plane come. And the plane got put down in that field. And that tribe, because of that one leader who decided that he wanted to hear from the great God, the whole tribe comes to faith in God. Because in South America, you follow your tribal leader. And just because, and he just wanted to be that great leader, and that's what his father told him to do if he wanted to become a great leader. And that's the way that it happened. And that is not a fake story. That is a true story. The fella who was at one time the head of our missions department, it was him. He's the one who is a literal story. And he was with them all week and told them stories about the great God.
Wow.
I'll tell you another one. And this one is for generations. So in the Bible,
story.
What's that?
It's a different field of dreams story.
Yeah, but it's a real one.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Bible, Jesus goes to heal somebody. Chris, are you able to show? If you looked up a picture, could you show it to us off of your screen? Do you have the technology to do that?
Yeah.
I have the technology.
I want you to find a modern day picture of the Pool of Siloam. The most recent picture that you could possibly find of the Pool of Siloam.
Okay, I'm on it.
Okay, so the Pool of Siloam, there's a story that goes along with that. And in the Pool of Siloam, Jesus runs into this blind man. Okay. This is in the Gospel of John. And when he runs into this blind man, Jesus goes down, he makes mud, he spits into the mud, and he makes mud balls, and he puts it over top of the blind guy's eyes. And he says, go wash into the pool. Now, as soon as Chris shows us, I want all of us to be able to see what this pool looks like. This guy has never been in where the Pool of Siloam has been before. So he doesn't know what this is like because he is an unclean person because by Jewish law, him being blind, he's unclean.
Okay.
All right? So he's never been allowed to be in it's called a mikvah. Nope. I need you to get me a newer picture than that.
Okay.
Go to Google, because it's you'll know it's the pool is way bigger. It's almost the size of an Olympic pool.
Okay.
Okay.
Now that they've gotten done unearthing a little bit more of it.
Oh wow.
And get a good picture of the steps.
Okay.
So the guy has never been in there before. And Jesus said, go wash yourself.
Mm-hmm.
and then go present yourself, because now, if you wash yourself, you'll be clean. And when you're clean, you need to make a presentation at the temple. And so, no,
We'll try again.
give me a better one. You can find them. Just go through Google Images. You'll end up seeing what the steps look like. I need a really good picture of the steps that lead down to the pool.
Okay.
And this guy has never been there before. But if this guy who told him to go and wash goes and does that, then he believed him and had the faith in order to go do that. And so you got to get the idea. He's never been in here before. He's never been allowed to be in here before. In fact, he's been blind from birth. The Bible is very, very explicit about saying that. Have you found something?
I'm working
trying
on
to help.
Okay. So this guy goes in to this place, and he has to go down these steps. And if Chris can get the right picture, there is several tiers of steps. And they drop, because they're also seats, they drop about 24 inches, and they're made out of cut stone. They're cut into the bedrock. I want you to try to think for a second about a guy who has never been there. He's blind. What do you think it felt like to him to try to get down to the pool's edge? He's never been there before.
Yeah, probably pretty difficult.
So how do you think? Do you think he maybe got down on his hands and knees? Can you
Yeah.
think about what that stone felt like? And since he had never been there before, he had no idea how many steps he had to go. So have you ever tried to do something sometime and it's like, I'm never going to get there. It's never going to happen. I can't do it. Blah, blah, blah. It's because you don't know what it looks like and you don't know where the bottom is.
Right.
And this is going to take forever.
trust.
I can only imagine everything that is going through this guy's mind trying to get down there. Did he fall on his face one of the times?
Right.
Did he end up kissing the stone a little bit?
Probably.
But he made it all the way down. And when he washed, he became healed. He got his eyesight back.
That's incredible.
It is, especially if you get to see what it looks like now that they've actually unearthed what the Pool of Siloam looks like.
All the pictures I found were not very good when I went to Google. I just typed in.
It's pretty.
Oh, really?
It's pretty challenging, but I mean, here you can see what you're talking about as well as the steps.
That's actually not the Pool of Siloam. Somebody's missed your picture.
Well.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, bad. Don't go to tourism websites.
I wished I could. I don't have the ability to do pictures, do I?
You should.
Can from your side.
Yeah, there should be a button down at the bottom you should see that says share.
Share?
Yeah, and if you hover over it, you'll see screen. And then
Oh,
once you
okay.
have a photo up, if you click screen, it should pull up the option, like whatever windows you've got open, so you can share that specific one.
All right. Well, okay. Let me try here real quick. Yeah.
Would probably be better because what you've got in your mind's eye
True.
of the image that you're looking for.
Okay, I got what you're saying. So wow. I'm looking to see what Google has done, and Google Images is really throttled back on pictures.
I'm showing you the best of the angles that I was able to find.
Yeah, they've really throttled back on pictures. Okay, so tell me, how do I share this screen real quick?
If you hover over the share button, you should see where it says screen. Does that pop up for you?
Yep.
Click it, and it should present you options that you can click on.
Gotcha. Can you guys see that?
It's loading.
Oh,
There you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
Okay, right there. And this is not new either, but it'll illustrate the steps for you. It actually starts way up here where my cursor is
Okay.
and comes down. See how they're cut into the bedrock, and they're about 24 inches a cut.
Yeah.
And that's what this guy had to try and go down. And the one that comes in from the street level is up here where my cursor is.
Yeah.
That's the street level where Jesus would have healed him, and he would have had to try and come in and come down all these steps. And this is where the water would have been. But if I can't get a modern picture, all of this is dug away now.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And,
They were able to excavate it.
Yes. They've been excavating it for quite some time. Okay, so how do I get out of this?
Hover back over the share. It should say like something like stop or.
It says stop right there. There you go.
Nice.
So that's one thing I wanted to see is what that guy did. Now, there's a tribe in Africa. The guy went over and tried to write scripture for this tribe in Africa, a very, very small tribe. And this tribe has a witch doctor that is living in town. And one of the reasons why this guy could not seem to break the line up to be able to minister to them is because the witch doctor was more powerful than anything that this guy could write out of the Word of God. And so the guy went to go, he's like, if I make friends with the witch doctor, maybe things will become better. And so he goes to the witch doctor. And everything that the witch doctor does in order to heal other people, because he believes that the healing comes from him, is he spits and makes mud pies out of things. And he applies the mud pie to the wounds and the things that are going on.
Did he say ooh,
Yeah, my friend the witch doctor. And so this guy's like, wow. There's a guy, he goes, the great Lord of my Bible, he goes, he did that one time. And the witch doctor stopped and said, what did he do? He said, well, he spit, he made mud, and he put it over a man's eyes who was blind at birth. He said, I can't heal anyone who is blind from birth. If they're blind afterwards, I can, but I can't heal anyone that's blind from birth. And he said, oh, well, he did. And he spit into the mud, and he said he told the man to go wash off in the pool, and he received his eyesight back. And through that one story, it ended up reaching it because that witch doctor realized that man, Jesus, was greater than him. Now, here's the cool part. Did God have Jesus do that 2,000 years ago in order to be able to reach that tribe in Africa 2,000 years later?
That's crazy.
Nobody else uses that method for anything.
Yeah.
And we always wondered, why did Jesus do that?
Rub some dirt on it.
It's just some great things. Now, if you want to pull that into the demonic, the witch doctor receiving his power, where did he get his power from?
The demonic.
The demonic. But notice he said, I can't heal anyone who is blind from birth. The very thing in that story in John says that nobody, it is even recorded in the Bible, nobody has healed a man who has ever been blind from birth. That's actually recorded in the Gospel of John. And here this witch doctor likewise could not heal him, and that's what made him greater.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting that brings up the other story where Jesus healed a man, and the disciples are asking him, who sinned that the man was born this way? Was it his father or his mother? Because they understood the spiritual right, like we were talking about earlier, right? And then Jesus answers them and says, no,
It was neither one.
neither one. He was born this way so that the glory of God could be shown in his life. And I'm heavily
Absolutely.
heavily paraphrased, but
But you're very accurate. Yeah, there you go. So you demons have tried to redo all kinds of miracles of God and of Jesus Christ, and it's part of what he does, again, to accuse or to deceive people. And so there will be all these miraculous things that will be done, especially in the end time. Man, we're going to see things right out in the open that Satan is going to do. But Moses. Remember, all of the Pharaoh's magicians could repeat an awful lot of the things that Moses could do, right up until Moses' staff turned into a snake and ate all theirs.
Yeah.
To show that he had power over them. But out of all the miracles, I've heard theologians say that the demons will try to do and duplicate. This one with the blind man, blind from birth, cannot be redone. And then the other one is turning water into wine. Can't be duplicated.
well, I can turn water into wine. It just takes me like 14 days, and I need some grapes, and I need some yeast, and I need...
Sure.
Instantaneously turn water into the wine. That's actually the reason why it can't be redone.
Right, and not just wine, but that it was instantly aged. To the point which shows God's
Fermented.
not just power over the substance, but then power over like time. Like right there in the moment.
Yep.
Well,
All right, Brandon, did we go as far as you wanted to go? I mean, we've been all over the place.
we have. I'm good with that. We did almost 4 hours, which I think is awesome.
What?
Yeah, 3 hours
Yeah.
and 40 minutes we're sitting at. So pretty close to 4 hours. No, but this is great conversation. I love listening to your stories and your knowledge. It's pretty astounding, I think, to meet and talk to people who know a lot about a subject, and you're one of those people, absolutely. So I really, really, really appreciate your time. And I think the most astounding thing to me is the level of faith that you have, and just how through your stories and listening to you, especially sharing the one about the woman who came to your house and the experience that you had, it's all testament to just how great God is in working through people to do and show, like you said, the glory of God is shown through his life. Chris, that you're talking about the other story, but the same idea lives there. So, but I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me about this, and well, everybody, not just me, but talking to the audience who's listening. I was really looking forward to this because I knew I was going to learn a lot, and I absolutely did. So, thank you for that.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And, if you end up getting any questions or anything like that I need to respond to, I'd be more than happy. If you get somebody to call me crazy or whatever, don't share that with me.
I ain't worried about that. Yeah.
I don't want to know.
Yeah, fair enough.
All
no,
right.
not worried about the craziness. That's for sure.
Dad,
All right.
I'd love to have you back so that we could have another conversation like we had a couple months ago about the confluence of Christianity and extraterrestrials.
Oh, that'd be fun. I thought of a question for that in the middle of it, and then it just kind of got pushed aside.
That would be a whole conversation.
Because
in
there's
and
a
of
whole
itself.
group of people, and without going into it, but there's a whole group of
Right.
people who think that extraterrestrials are demons, and that's we'd love to hear that.
There's a legitimacy to that.
Save some for next time. Save some.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
We'll leave the suspense.
Yeah.
The suspense for next time.
But there's also a legitimacy for aliens being aliens.
See?
Yeah. See, there we go. See, perfect place to end it right there.
There you go. All right.
Yes. I'll leave you with this. And I always talk about her. There's a professor I've read her books. I really enjoy her work. Her name is Diana Pasulka. She's a professor of religion at University North Carolina, Wilmington. But the first book she wrote it wasn't the one that gained her notoriety, but it's called Heaven Can Wait. And it's essentially all of these stories of saints who have, in the trials and tribulations that they have gone through. And her hypothesis essentially, and then the follow-up work she's had, are that those encounters that saints had that back that in that time and then still now, but specifically then, were attributed to religion. People today are having the same experiences, but they're being attributed to extraterrestrials, and that they are one and the same. They're not separate from one another. That they're the same experiences. It's still religious, right? She as a professor of religion has to remain like objective when she teaches, but now that she's sort of come out and written these books and things like that, she admits she's Catholic, and she's actually had permission to go and read at the Vatican secret library, but that essentially, like the Saint Teresa, right? Like the experience, Teresa of Avila, the experiences that she had. There are people who in modernity have had similar experiences, but the people in modern times attribute it to extraterrestrials. But they are the same experiences. It's just like lenses, essentially. But it's still religious. Is sort of her. It's interesting. You may find reading what she has to say, it's very relevant to this topic. So.
I do know this. Currently in the Middle East, there are, over the past 4 years, in Muslim countries, especially Afghanistan and, basically, let's just say Middle East Islam. There are literally thousands of stories of people having impressions, visions of Jesus Christ.
Oh, I did not know that.
There are stories that are very, very suppressed. Islam does not want Jesus to enter into their religion. And in fact, the latest group was early on in the war with Hamas. If you remember, their part of their tactic was to split Gaza Strip in half and keep that. Just the day or two before that happened, there were people who came out of it and automatically went to the north, which is what they were supposed to do, and the IDF didn't understand why there was a small migration that was moving north, and they hadn't started it yet, but it made things go a lot easier for them. Some Jewish missionaries, Messianic Jews, went in to start preaching to them and asking them why did they come north, and they said that because they had visions of a white man, and they don't mean European white. He was white, and kind of like what Chris described. Okay, told them to go north.
Wow.
And so they did, and the white man asked them, can you believe in me and I will come back for you? And these kinds of things. Again, stuff that we don't necessarily see in our word, but it's not out of bounds by any stretch of the imagination. And so you're getting these Christophanies that are happening in Islam. And absolutely amazing. And there's a few people that are chronicling them, and I wish that there were more. It would be absolutely inspirational to Christians to be able to hear it. Well, to some Christians.
Yeah.
I saw a thing the other day where two Jewish people, Sergio and Rhoda, don't know if you know who they are, podcasters, and they came over to the United States during the inauguration, and somebody had challenged them to help them hand out tracts in Washington, D.C., and the goal was in 4 days to hand out 8,000, and they got it done. But as they went past this one place, there was a guy on a bullhorn, and he saw the guy, Sergio, had a hat that said something about Jesus on it. And this guy is supposed to be preaching the gospel. He's a white guy. And he says to him, he goes, "Are you from America?" And hollers it through his bullhorn. And Sergio just pointed to his hat that said Jesus, didn't really say anything. He goes, "Yeah, you're probably not American. We need more whites around here anyway." And I'm like, Are you kidding me? I don't care where this guy's. He's handing out a tract. He's a brother, man, in a lot of ways. You know, he's trying to share Jesus Christ just because he's of darker skin than you. What? Oh man, that truly was a bigot.
Yeah.
I mean, he made me I'm proud to be a white man. I mean, it's just like,
right.
Dude, shut up.
Yeah, no, people like that are absolutely ignorant, but
yeah.
no, that would be a fun conversation, I think, Chris. I agree. I would love to talk about it. That's a conversation that I like having all the time. Ask Chris. Any opportunity I get to bring up Diana Pasulka, I always do. And there's a lot in those books I think that you would find really, really interesting, especially on the God can do this, but others will try to do it, and they can't make it the same way aspect. I'll just leave it like that without giving too much of the sausage and how it's made. But yeah, it's
Can you
interesting.
leave her name in the description there for folks?
Oh yeah, I can. I can text it to Chris if you want. He can text it to you.
Yeah, because I hear you say it, but I need the spelling of it.
Yeah, Pasulka, Pasulka is her name. But anyway, you can find her if you are all over. If you're on social media, she's all over it. If you have an X account or anything like that, if you just look her up, she's pretty active, and she's very vocal in the disclosure movement as well. She's been to Congress and things like that as well. So, but anyway, yes, that would be a great conversation to have. I would love to set that up maybe after the baby is born, maybe for the July timeframe, because I'm intentionally like trying to schedule around that. I don't know what it's going to look like for me yet. So,
for sure.
But anyway, for everybody listening, please go and check out the show notes. One of the best ways to support us is by supporting our sponsors. You guys know, especially if you've watched the live shows, you know that we support all of our sponsors and use their products and can attest for their efficacy and how good they are. So would not try to sell you BS. Anyway, go ahead and support those. Click the follow. I beg you, please go check out us over at Red Pill Threads / I Came with Fire. If you want, I got right here the Teddy Roosevelt Brutal American shirt. Yeah, one of my faves. But yeah, click that follow button, guys. Helps us out. It doesn't cost you anything. When I look at the viewership over on YouTube, there are people who watch us regularly, but they are not actively following. So just, the algorithm's going to show us to you, but make sure it shows us to you by clicking that follow button. And it really would mean a lot to us and help us out quite a bit. So anyway, thank you very much for your time, Pastor Eric. I appreciate it as always, and thank you guys, the fans, for listening to the show. And we'll catch you on the next one.